Chapter 41. After Yu Yi wiped out the 100-man team, it was time to reap the rewards. Yu Yi took a deep breath. On the messy battlefield full of corpses, wisps of blue gas that were invisible to the naked eye floated out from the corpses, and were then swallowed by Yu Yi. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a genin and obtaining 2000 points of swallowing evolution genes. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a chunin and obtaining 5000 points of swallowing evolution genes. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a special jonin and obtaining 10,000 points of swallowing evolution genes. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of an elite jonin and obtaining 20,000 points of swallowing evolution genes. A series of system prompts sounded like silver bells in Yu Yi's mind. Then, Yu Yi began a series of upgrade and evolution journeys. At the same time, Yu Yi's snake body had obvious changes again, and the snake body grew little by little. 81 meters, 82 meters, 83 meters, until 90 meters, it stopped because it was exhausted. The waist circumference that was originally as thick as 7 people hugging together has now become as thick as 8 people hugging together, like a towering tree that has grown for many years. The white scales as big as a palm are tightly connected to each other, like a scale armor, reflecting the sun's light, making Yu Yi look majestic and invincible. Yu Yi can feel that the power in his body has increased significantly now. With every move, he has the power to break stones and split jade. If he fights Akimichi Choza again now, he may be able to get rid of him quickly. Yu Yi can't wait to take a look at the system personal information to see the current situation. System goal: help the host evolve into the infinite snake of all worlds. Current world: Naruto. Host: Yu Yi. Breed: White Python. Age: under 1 year old, complete body. Lifespan: 50 years. Devouring evolution gene: 4000/18000. Level: LV180. Language: Snake language, human language, only for Naruto. Talent: primary devouring, intermediate fire affinity, intermediate earth affinity. Abilities: strengthened fangs, strengthened skin, primary regeneration. Overall evaluation: comparable to elite jonin, and in some cases even able to compete with Penumbra. The infinite snake of 10,000 worlds has just begun. Follow the system's footsteps and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. This time, the system's evaluation of Yu Yi changed from ordinary jonin to elite jonin. Obviously, after a fierce battle, Yu Yi got a lot of benefits and his strength improved quickly. This gave Yu Yi a bit more confidence when dealing with Orochimaru. Yu Yi's upper body stood up, and from where he could see from a distance that above the venue of the Chunin exam, there was a square purple barrier, which was pitch black and nothing could be seen clearly. Obviously, at this moment, Orochimaru had summoned the first and second generations, and was fighting with Sarutobi Hiruzen, and fell into a stalemate. Yu Yi raised his lips and said excitedly, "Fight, fight! The more intense the fight, the better it is for me." This time, Yu Yi was determined to get rid of Orochimaru, the hidden danger. Orochimaru had always coveted Yu Yi's body. If it weren't for various reasons, Yu Yi would have been possessed by him long ago. After the battle between Orochimaru and Sarutobi Hiruzen, both of his hands were disabled. This was a golden opportunity for Yu Yi. Once he missed it, he didn't know when he would find Orochimaru's hiding place next time. A breeze blew by. The leaves around were lifted up, and the leaves fluttered and danced in the wind. Without the intervention of the ninja, Yu Yi opened his bloody mouth, and fist-sized fireballs were sprinkled out like money, landing on the trees and eaves. Soon, the fire became more and more intense, and the entire west gate of Konoha village was plunged into a sea of fire. Even the ninjas fighting near the east gate could feel a warm breeze blowing on their faces. Kakashi and Might Guy had rushed to the east gate at first, and now they noticed something was wrong, so they immediately climbed up to look far away. Seeing that the fire on the west side of the village was getting more fierce, looking over, a large number of trees were burning, and the fire that soared into the sky was rising and jumping, like countless fire demons devouring everything madly. With an unmatched momentum, Kakashi and Might Guy's faces became more serious. "What's going on?" Kakashi looked shocked and said. "Didn't Narashikaku and the others take a group of people to the west to put out the fire? How could the fire burn like this?" Neither of them saw Yu Yi. "This is nonsense. Yu Yi created this fire for a purpose. First, it was to complete the system's task. Second, it was also to attract the attention of some strong men in Konoha village, so that Konoha village would be exhausted and create an opportunity for Yu Yi to kill Orochimaru. Just the group of people led by the older generation of Zhu Ludi almost made Yu Yi disappear into ashes, and he didn't want to attract the terrifying strong men like Might Guy. That would be a big deal. So, after setting the fire, Yu Yi used earth escape to hide underground and waited for the opportunity to come. The fire was raging and rolling. The wind was getting stronger and stronger, and the fire roared wildly with the wind, just like endless demons laughing wildly after seeing delicious food, rolling in. Kakashi's eyes became more serious when he saw this scene. He felt that the old generation of the Inoshikacho trio might be in danger. Thinking of this, Kakashi said to Might Guy, "Akai, it seems that we need to go to the west." Although Might Guy was also worried about the consequences of the fire spreading, he was hesitant when he saw the sand ninjas and sound ninjas who were rushing into the village and wreaking havoc in the streets and alleys, fearing that the loss of their two high-end combat forces would lead to the complete loss of the East Gate. Fortunately, at this moment, a burly figure came to rescue. This was a middle-aged man. With long white hair, painted face, wearing a red robe, a bundle of scrolls on his back, and high wooden clogs on his feet, he walked forward with a swagger like he was walking on stilts and said, "Kakashi, Might Guy, you can go and put out the fire without worry, I'm here, nothing will happen. Even if the Kazekage comes, I will make him never come back." This person is really arrogant. When Kakashi heard this, he didn't like the other party's arrogant tone at first, and then turned his head suddenly. When he saw the other party's familiar face, the displeasure just now disappeared immediately, and Kakashi said in surprise, "Master Jiraiya, you are back." There are only a few people in Konoha village who can be respectfully called master by Kakashi, who was born as a genius. Obviously, as one of the three legendary ninjas in Konoha village, Jiraiya deserves the honorific of Kakashi. Chapter 42. Just as Jiraiya and Kakashi were meeting to discuss the matter, the battle between Sarutobi Hiruzen and Orochimaru was coming to an end. Sarutobi Hiruzen put his hands on Orochimaru's shoulders, and the god of death's right hand emerged from his belly, tightly grasping Orochimaru's soul. The protracted battle made the old and frail Sarutobi Hiruzen's face full of exhaustion, but his eyes were always bright and he said coldly, "Orochimaru, I want to take away all the ninjutsu you have learned." Orochimaru was startled, with thin beads of cold sweat oozing out from his forehead, and said angrily, "What did you say?" The next moment, under Orochimaru's shocked and angry gaze, the god of death raised his right hand, his arm covered with obscure incantations, holding a spiritual sword that could cut off souls. Suddenly, the knife swung down. The sharp and unstoppable spiritual sword cut off the arms of Orochimaru's soul. Pain. Incredible pain. It hurts more than having my little brother cut off. Unprecedented pain surged into Orochimaru's heart. Ah! The shrill howl, like the cry of a night dire, penetrates the heaven and earth. Sarutobi Hiruzen died of exhaustion, the wrinkles on his face stretched out, and he fell to the ground on his back with blessings and hope for the Leaf Village. Orochimaru was so painful that he broke into a cold sweat. Looking at Sarutobi Hiruzen's body, his chest heaved violently with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "This bastard!" Orochimaru looked down at his arms, which seemed to be covered with plaster and as heavy as lead, and said to himself, "My hands seem to be on fire." Seeing the end of the battle, the four sound ninjas who had arranged the barrier immediately asked for orders and said, "Lord Orochimaru, what should we do next?" Orochimaru felt his chest burning with every breath of air he took. However, he knew very well in his heart that not to mention that his arms were crippled and he could no longer use any ninjutsu. Just now, once the ninjas of Konoha village come to their senses, they, a group of aliens in the hinterland of Konoha village, will be strangled like never before. Without any hesitation, Orochimaru immediately issued the order, decisively. "No need for a barrier, let's go back immediately." The four sound ninjas said, "Yes." Now, in the east of Konoha village, there are three-headed snakes and sound ninja causing chaos, one Shikaku is wreaking havoc in the middle, and in the west there is a fire burning down the village. It can be said that everything is in danger and manpower is needed everywhere. As a result, the four sound ninjas easily fled the scene with Orochimaru. Kidomaru carried Orochimaru on his back and asked, "Lord Orochimaru, which way are we going now?" Regarding the current situation of Konoha village, Orochimaru already knew it through the mouths of the four sound ninjas, and said, "Go north, to the country of grass, then transfer to the country of Dokawa, and then return to the Sound Ninja village. Although the journey was a bit time-consuming, it was enough to cover up the possible location of the Sound Ninja village and avoid being exposed to the sight of Konoha village's pursuers. The 4 Sound Ninjas naturally obeyed the order. We were about to arrive at the north gate of Konoha village, and from then on the sea and the sky would be vast and carefree, but unexpectedly, an accident happened. Boom! The ground rolled, and the entire land was like a lifted carpet, oscillating in a wave-like trajectory. The 4 Sound Ninjas were elites personally selected by Orochimaru. As soon as they noticed something was wrong, they immediately scattered and each found a favorable location. Then, in their surprised eyes, the ground suddenly exploded, soil mixed with grass flew everywhere, and a huge snake head roared out of the ground. Needless to say, the visitor was Yu Yet. Nato opened his lantern-sized vertical pupils and glanced at the 5 people present, especially stopping at Orochimaru with obvious malice. After Orochimaru was stunned at first, he quickly regained his composure. Apparently, he immediately recognized Nato's identity. It was the little white snake he channeled at the beginning. However, Orochimaru never imagined that in just nearly a month, Orochimaru would grow so fast and become as big as 10,000 snakes. Feeling the malice in Nato's eyes, Orochimaru pretended to be calm and said, "Little guy, you are here to welcome us back, right?" When the 4 Sound Ninjas heard this, they suddenly trembled. Yes, the giant white python in front of you might be the foreshadowing left by Lord Orochimaru early in the morning. The 4 Sound Ninjas have always been die-hard fans of Orochimaru, and they are good at using snakes, so they are not at all wary of Nato's appearance. All this is naturally seen in Yu Yi's eyes. So, very unexpectedly, Yu Ye suddenly launched a surprise attack. The target is naturally Orochimaru, who Kidomaru is carrying. The giant tail swept across the sky, like a pillar being smashed out. With a huge force, a strong wind roared in. Kidomaru's pupils widened and he couldn't understand why the giant white python in front of him acted without any explanation. Where are the friendly forces we promised? Kidomaru was not alert at all, and the incident happened suddenly. Without any surprise, the giant tail hit Kidomaru fiercely. Click, bang! Amidst the crisp sound of bones breaking, Kidomaru felt as if he had been hit by a train. The bones in his chest were broken inch by inch, and all his internal organs were shattered. His whole body, including Orochimaru on his back, was like a kite with its string broken. The semicircle arc flew backwards. Boom! 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 Kidomaru broke through 3 walls in succession, and fell heavily into a house like a broken bag, vomiting blood mixed with fragments of internal organs, and died instantly. Poor Kidomaru, he clearly had the curse seal, and once his body changed, he would have the strength of an elite jonin, but unfortunately he died inexplicably. Even Orochimaru, who was on his back, fell to the ground, his clothes were covered with dust and blood, and he looked extremely embarrassed. Seeing this, the pupils of the other 3 Odanin suddenly shrank, and they said in shock and anger, "Protect Lord Orochimaru." The 3 of them were agile, and they came to Orochimaru like ghosts in a leap, forming a triangle formation, protecting Orochimaru tightly. Orochimaru had fought with Sarutobi Hiruzen for a long time before, and with his arms disabled, he had already reached the point of being at the end of his rope. Orochimaru's lips turned pale, and he stood up shakily, trying to persuade Yu Yi, saying, "Little guy, we had no grudges yesterday and no grievances today, there is no need to kill me, right?" Hearing this, Yu Yi curled his lips. "I believed you, old man, so bad." Since Yu Yi was reborn and transmigrated, he has been threatened by Orochimaru and Kabuto Yakushi. In order to survive, Yu Yi had to fight his way out and did many things he dared not think of. Yu Yi's eyes were cold and he sneered. "Orochimaru, don't pretend anymore. Didn't you covet my body at first?" Hearing this, Orochimaru's body was shocked. He didn't understand how Yu Yi knew about this. Chapter 43. Orochimaru was shocked. Although he didn't understand why his deeply hidden thoughts were known by Yu Yi. But at this moment, he also stopped his unrealistic thoughts. His face suddenly became serious. He said to the remaining 4 Odanin, "Taeya and Jiro Fang stay and delay the enemy. Sakan and Yukon take me to evacuate this place immediately." Hearing this, the remaining 3 were shocked. Especially Taeya and Jiro Fang, they knew very well that if they stayed this time, even if they completed the delaying task, they would be hunted down by the pursuers of Konoha village and die in the end. The only difficulty in the ages is death. How many people can die generously in the face of death? But Taewi and Jiro Fang didn't hesitate at all and agreed immediately. Yes. In their minds, Orochimaru is their heaven and everything to them. Even if Orochimaru told them to die, they never frowned. Seeing that Sakan and Yukon were carrying Orochimaru and were about to run away, they asked Yu Yi if he agreed or not. Don't even think about running away. Yu Yi's eyes were fierce, and he rushed forward like a violent warship. Facing the white giant python as big as a hill, Taewi and Jirobo were not afraid at all. They stood in the way that Yu Yi had to pass with the attitude of an ant trying to shake a tree. The two looked at each other. The tacit understanding of years of cooperation made them understand everything from each other's eyes. Even if we risk our lives, we must buy time for Lord Orochimaru to evacuate. The two did not hesitate and immediately entered the curse seal, with obscure spells all over their bodies. Taewi took out a flute, put it in front of his cherry lips, and played it gently. Just the first note appeared, and before the song started, Yu Yi's hair stood on end. Ah, buzz buzz buzz, squeak. Ah. The sound of the flute is like the howling of a night owl, the fluttering of wild bees, the noisy and chaotic sound like cotton flicking in the market, out of tune, extremely unpleasant, and extremely disgusting. This extremely uncomfortable flute sound made Yu Yi feel restless and agitated. We must not let her continue to play. A trace of murderous intent flashed in Yu Yi's eyes, and his momentum of rushing forward became more violent. Seeing that the distance between the two sides was only 500 meters, Jiro Fang pressed his hands on the ground and shouted. Earth escape! Return to the earth and land! A large amount of yellow light gathered on the ground in front, and Yu Yi began to tremble on the way forward. Then, the ground under Jiro Fang's feet began to rise, turning into a wall of earth, blocking Yu Yi in front of him. I want to see who can stop me today. Yu Yi's eyes were fierce. Although Orochimaru was right in front of him, he was blocked again and again, which also aroused his ruthlessness in his heart. He didn't dodge or evade at all, and directly crashed into him. Bang! 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 The 10-centimeter thick earth walls were as fragile as paper, and were smashed into pieces in an instant, splashing in all directions. Yu Yi pushed violently all the way, came in front of Jirobo, opened his mouth and sprayed, and a flame spiral ball shot out. Who knew that Jirobo was already prepared? Earth Escape Barrier. Earth Prison Hall. This was originally a ninjutsu used to seal the enemy's actions, but he used it as a defensive barrier. A large amount of rocks began to gather around him. Under his control, a solid bunker was formed, surrounding himself. However, Yu Yi's flame spiral ball, how could it be easy to deal with? With surging flame energy, the flame spiral ball was like a high explosive grenade, directly blasting a big hole in the solid bunker, and the raging flames spread out, and even poured into it along the gap. Yu Yi was just about to seize the opportunity to crush the guy who was blocking his way. But at this time, the prelude of Duiwea was ready, and the official chapter began. Magic Flute. Dream Sound Lock. Duiwea took a deep breath and played it fiercely. Squeak. The sound of the flute was like nails scratching glass, and countless mice were chasing and gnawing, rustling, and scratching. Yu Yi's swooping snake head suddenly stopped in midair, the snake mouth opened 180 degrees, and drops of saliva dripped down, which looked so funny, but it was full of fatal danger. Yu Yi only felt a sway in front of his eyes, and the scene in front of him suddenly changed. There was no wooden house anymore, but he was in a fantasy with an empty scene. And he himself, the huge snake body, was tied up by black iron chains. Yu Yi tried to struggle, and his face was slightly stunned. What he didn't expect was that with his current powerful strength, he couldn't break free. Taewia's voice came from all directions at the right time. Don't struggle in vain. Your body will be bound in the virtual fantasy I created, and then slowly corroded. Just stay here and wait for the end of the world. After that, Taewia stopped making any sound. It was obvious that she was using all her ninjutsu in reality to bind Yu Yi firmly in place. It can be seen that Taewia was not as easy as she said. At this time, Jirobo came out of a pile of fire in a mess. His body was charred by the embers and looked very embarrassed. Seeing that Taewia had controlled Yu Yi, Jirobo's eyes flashed with joy. He gave her a thumbs up and said, Taewia, you did a great job. Taewia also showed a little pride on her face. Needless to say, don't you look at who I am. After all, the white giant python in front of him was not an ordinary person, but he was still tightly controlled by him. Just when Taewia was secretly happy, he glanced at the corner of his eye and suddenly found that Yu Yi's snake head suddenly moved. What's going on? As mentioned earlier, Yu Yi has lived 2 lives and has a strong mental power. A little ordinary illusion can only trap him for a moment. If it was the so-called unsolvable Tsukuyomi, maybe he would be a little afraid. Taeu is worthy of being a veteran of the battlefield. While performing body skills to move positions, he reminded Jirobo, saying, "Danger." When Jirobo saw Taewia leaping, he sensitively sensed that something was wrong. When he was about to dodge, he suddenly heard a sharp sound of breaking wind from behind his head. Swoosh! It happened so fast. Yu Yi opened his mouth and spit out snake tongue like a halberd, as fast as lightning, like a spear shot out like a dragon, directly piercing Jiro Fang's heart from the back. Jiro Fang felt his physical strength quickly draining away, and his eyes began to darken. Are you going to die? In Jiro Fang's mind, the voice and appearance of Orochimaru suddenly appeared. I'm sorry, Lord Orochimaru, I failed to complete the task you assigned perfectly. Chapter 44. Jirobo. Seeing her friend lying on the ground without his life, Taewia's eyes were filled with tears. Nato did not show mercy just because Taewia was a woman, and said coldly. Next, it's your turn. Nato twisted his waist and rushed straight towards Taewia, like a cold and ruthless steel behemoth, filled with a ferocious and cruel aura. Taewia was shocked and angry, but he also knew that this was not the time to be angry. Taewia jumped up and down, distanced himself from Nato, then tiptoed a little, and he flew lightly like a swift, gently landing on the corner of the eaves. His hands quickly formed seals, and he suddenly pressed down on the ground. Psychic art. Circles of complex and incomprehensible runes appeared on the ground, and along with a burst of blue smoke, 3 burly and huge figures appeared. They are the 3 ghosts summoned by Taewia. One ghost holds a thick wooden stick, another ghost uses bone claws, and the other ghost's upper body, including his head, is wrapped in bandages and has no arms. Taewia has not forgotten the mission assigned by Orochimaru. Even if she dies today, she will nail Yu Yi here. Taewia put her pink petals on the flute and started playing it gently. Buzz buzz. Just like in a mass grave, thousands of rotting corpses are exposed to the scorching heat, the sun is shining brightly, and countless mosquitoes and flies are flying around. With the sound of the flute, Taewia entered the second stage of the curse seal transformation. His skin turned black and rough, his hair became brown, and several goat horns grew on the top of his head, as if possessed by a demon, and his whole body's aura suddenly changed. Then, the sound of the flute changed from slow to fast, like a roller coaster swooping down from the top. Ah! The sound screams like a barren mountain, a widow weeping at night, a mourning dog whimpering, an oil lamp blazing with phosphorus, and 100 ghosts walking at night. It's so weird. Finale Chapter 9. Magic Mirror Rebellion. As the sound of the flute gradually reached its climax, the 3 ghosts summoned by Taewia immediately sprayed out a strange substance composed of spiritual energy from their mouths, twisting like earthworms, crawling in the air towards Nato's body. Yu Yi opened his mouth and sprayed out, and orange-red flames came out of his mouth. Unexpectedly, the flames penetrated directly through the spiritual energy body in the mouth of the 3 ghosts, without any effect. Puff! 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 3 spiritual energy bodies clung to Yu Yi's body and immediately began to absorb the magic chakra in his body. Yu Yi immediately felt that the fairy chakra in his body was like a dam collapsing, pouring out crazily. In just a few moments, nearly half of the fairy chakra was cut off. Realizing this, Yu Yi's eyes suddenly changed. You know, Yu Yi has never had a lot of senjutsu chakra, so he has always been careful and rarely uses ninjutsu as an emergency. Even before, when Yu Yi fought with the ninjas led by the older generation Ino Lu Dai, he did not consume as much fairy chakra as he does now. Taewia, you succeeded in irritating me. With a shocking roar, Yu Yi flicked his giant tail. With the help of the intermediate earth affinity, his tail was inserted into the ground, passed through numerous obstacles under the ground, and suddenly appeared from behind Taewia. Snap! The giant tail swept across the waist like a crossbar and hit Taewia's delicate back hard, making a clear and loud sound. Taewia felt as if he had been struck by lightning, his waist protruded forward, and his upper and lower bodies were directly bent at 90 degrees. Then, the person was shot forward like a cannonball, hitting Nato's body. Snap! Even the flute that Taewiya never left fell to the ground during the fall. Without Taewiya's control, the movements of the three ghosts stagnated, and the senjutsu chakra in Nato's body stopped the car and stopped leaking out. Nato lowered his head, looked down at the dying Taewiya, and said, "Do you have any last words?" The bones in Taewiya's waist were shattered and her central nerve was severed. The pain made her look pale, and her whole body was numb and unconscious. She couldn't even lift a finger. However, even so, Teo was worthy of being a subordinate carefully trained by Orochimaru. He still remained ferocious. He stared at Nato fiercely and spat at him. Ouch! Nato turned his head and dodged lightly. However, Taewiya's move also completely angered Nato. "I wanted to give you a dignified death, but now it seems that I'd better forget it." Yuya turned and left. Behind him, ferocious thorns bloomed like a beautiful yet dangerous mandala. Broken limbs and blood splattered everywhere. Nato looked at the direction in which Sakan, Yukon, and Orochimaru were leaving, and used thermal energy to sense the surroundings. Now, as Yuya becomes more powerful, his thermal energy sensing range has also expanded, with a radius of 1 kilometer within his sensing range. In Yuyi's heat perception, there are red figures distributed from near to far. This is because the human body is constantly emitting heat. The more powerful the creature, the higher the heat it emits to its surroundings. After Yuyi's careful investigation, he discovered that nearly 1 kilometer to the north, 2 red figures were running away at an extremely fast speed. A flash of light flashed in Yuyi's eyes, and he shouted, "Found you!" Sakan and Yukon carried Orochimaru on their backs and ran as fast as they could outside the north gate of Konoha village according to his instructions. There was no human habitation at all on the streets. Compared to the original work, the Konoha ninjas were so busy that no one came to organize the villagers to take refuge. As a result, the villagers hid in their homes to avoid being affected by the war. They only heard footsteps and slightly opened the wooden windows, and looked out curiously through a crack. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and the sky and the streets were also stained with gloomy colors. The dead branches and fallen leaves, flying dust and waste newspapers, and flocks of crows circling in the air added a bit of gloom to the lonely village. The cold wind blew through the long and narrow street, wrinkling Zojin and Yujin's clothes. Zojin and Yujin ignored the villagers' gazes and just ran out. But at this moment, the ground of the entire street was like an 8-magnitude earthquake, and smoke and dust rose in an instant. Then, sharp ground spikes, arranged in rows, emerged one after another like bamboo shoots after rain, densely popping up. What is Zojin and Yujin? Although the incident happened suddenly and he was carrying the burden of Orochimaru, Sakan and Yukon remained calm in the face of danger. They relied on their agility, smooth movements, and graceful posture to avoid being hit by the ground spikes. Sakan and Yukon jumped up and down, as slippery as a loach, avoiding the heavy ground spikes. They touched the ground with their feet and jumped up like a bird, hooking the lamp post beside them, and the whole person was like a bat, hanging upside down on it. Looking at the familiar scene in front of him, Sakan and Yukon broke out in a cold sweat. Could it be? Chapter 45. Boom! The vibration of the ground continued and became stronger and stronger, as if a huge drill was moving from underground. Even the lamp post on which Sakan and Yukon were hanging upside down began to shake violently, shaking him so much that he almost fell off. Gurgle! Sakan and Yukon swallowed hard, no longer holding any hope for the life and death of their companions. The next moment, in Sakan and Yukon's horrified eyes, the ground split open in both directions like water, the ground collapsed, and with thick dust rising, a huge black shadow drilled out from underground. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, 90 meters. The height supported by the upper body alone was as high as more than 10 floors. In the gradually fading smoke and dust, 2 pupils as big as lanterns burst out with orange-yellow light, and their gazes penetrated through the heavy dust and fell directly on Sakan, Yukon and Orochimaru. He was Yuyi who was chasing after them. "We meet again." Yuyi raised his mouth with a self-proclaimed friendly smile. But in Sakan Yukon's eyes, it was no different from a devilish grin. Sakan Yukon's eyes flashed with a trace of determination, and he jumped down from the lamp post, somersaulted in the air, and jumped on the ground with his toes like a dragonfly skimming the water, landing steadily, and putting down Orochimaru on his back. Sakan Yukon did not look back, but the 2 brothers who were originally conjoined separated, with the determination to sacrifice their lives for the sake of the master. The 2 brothers said in unison, "Lord Orochimaru, I'm sorry that I am incompetent, I can only send you here." Orochimaru was speechless, looked at Sakon Yukon deeply, and turned and left directly. There is no need for many words between ninjas. Hesitation will lead to defeat. Just like Jing Kai stabbing the king of Qin, Sakon and Yukon faced the huge Yi with the determination to sacrifice their lives, and said coldly. If you want Lord Orochimaru's life, you must first step over the bodies of our two brothers. The wind is whistling and the Yishui River is cold, and the warriors will never return once they leave. Yi also admired the loyalty of the four sound ninjas. However, since they are enemies, Yi has no intention of showing mercy. Going all out and giving the other party a decent death is the greatest respect for them. Yi looked down at Sakon and Yukon, who were like ants, and said. Come on, use all your strength to please me. Let me see how far you can go for Orochimaru. Yi roared, and with the momentum of sweeping thousands of troops, his giant tail swept over. Hey! The giant tail was fast and powerful, and it came with a fierce momentum, like an autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. The rubble on the ground was scattered like bullets. Even if they were only hit by these rubble, it would be enough to make Zojin and Yujin drink a pot. Zojin and Yujin looked at each other, nodded, and said. Let's go together. The two of them formed seals together, with the frequency synchronized, and pressed their hands on the ground together, shouting. Spiritual calling technique. Triple Rashomon. Boom. With a loud bang, the street ground was cracked like a spider web, and three green-faced fang walls dozens of feet high suddenly emerged from the ground, like the most loyal guards, blocking the giant tail. Bang! The first Rashomon was smashed to pieces in an instant, like a thin, crispy paper. Bang! The second Rashomon only lasted for a moment before it was torn into pieces by the violent force. As the saying goes, the first blow is strong, the second is weak, and the third is exhausted. Bang! The giant tail came to the third Rashomon, and only cracked the gate with cracks, but had no more strength to move forward. Sakon and Yukon looked at each other, and they could see the joy in each other's eyes. It's done. However, they were just happy for a short while, and a bunch of hideous ground spikes broke through the ground, like spears from the earth, stabbing at Sakon and Yukon. As twins, Sakon and Yukon were in tune with each other, watching all directions and listening to all directions. They stepped on the ground together, and their bodies turned into butterflies flying through flowers, with erratic trajectories and wonderful body movements, and they narrowly avoided the attack of the ground spikes. Interesting. Yi sensed the movements of the two people in the heat energy and was slightly surprised. Sakon Yukon, worthy of being the leader of the Sound Four. Unfortunately, you met me. Yi leaned down and merged into the ground, and the huge snake body soon disappeared. At this moment, Sakon Yukon was still struggling to dodge left and right in the continuous ground spike forest. It can be said that every step is thrilling and dangerous. If you are not careful, you will end up in an irreversible situation. It happened in a flash. Swoosh! A long scarlet tongue, like a streak of silk, suddenly shot out from the ground. It looked like it was no less fast than a bullet and shot straight into Sakon's chest. Sakon just had a strong sense of crisis in his heart, but with his skills, it was already very difficult to avoid the continuous ground spikes underground, and he had no spare energy to do anything else. Swish! Like a spear piercing the body, the long scarlet tongue pierced through Sakon's chest. Sakon! Yukon was shocked and angry, and was about to catch up and take Sakon back into his body, and use their special bloodline limits to recover Sakon's fatal injuries. But at this moment, Yi's voice came. As a family, we should be together. I will send you to hell now. A flaming raised nan as big as a basin spurted out from Yi's mouth and suddenly swept past Yukon. The surging heat wave, like a storm hitting the shore, scorched Yukon's hair and turned it yellow, and then blasted him into a blazing human torch. Sakon and Yukon fell to the ground almost at the same time. His back was facing the Lois and his face was facing the blue sky. Even though the breath of life was quickly fading from his body, Sakon and Yukon showed a happy smile on their faces. Even if it's just to delay Lord Orochimaru for a while, it's worth it. Sakon and Yukon slowly closed their eyes, and wisps of blue breath that were hard to find with the naked eye floated out from their bodies and were inhaled by Yi. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring the chakra of an elite Jonin and obtaining 20,000 devouring evolution genes. X2. Defeat the enemy and gain experience, nothing much to say. But what made Yi's eyes light up was the next sentence of the system. Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring the bloodline limit of Sakon and Yukon and obtaining 100,000 devouring evolution genes. Devour the bloodline limit, and gain more than simply devouring the chakra of the ninja? Yi was shocked. Isn't this forcing him to challenge the strong? After all, in the ninja world, ninjas with bloodline limits are generally not weak. Chapter 46. Konoha Village, 500 meters outside the North Gate. In the lush woods, a middle-aged man in a purple kimono jumped on the branches, as agile as a wild cat. Since Orochimaru parted with Sakon and Yukon, he has been shrouded in a deep sense of uneasiness, as if a sword of Damocles was suspended above his head, urging him to keep running away. However, when he saw the figure standing quietly on the ground in the depths of the forest ahead, as if it was cast with silver steel bars, Orochimaru suddenly showed a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. Orochimaru knew that today was his end. He couldn't escape. Orochimaru suddenly stopped, like a hero in his twilight years, looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, and laughed hoarsely and harshly, saying, "I didn't expect that after decades of dominating the ninja world, I would end up falling into the hands of a junior like you." Yuyi's huge figure crawled out of the darkness and came under the sunlight. His white scales were like a layer of armor, shining with folds, and his fierce and domineering temperament and huge snake head exuded a depressing atmosphere all the time. Yuyi lay in a coiled snake body, with his upper body standing up, staring down at Orochimaru, saying, "As a worthy opponent, do you have any last words?" Orochimaru's thin figure stood straight, staring at Yuyi, as if he was looking at a flawless work of art, with endless possessiveness in his eyes, and said enthusiastically, "If there is any regret, it is that I should have used the undead turning technique to possess your body immediately when I first saw you." Hearing this, Yuyi's eyes turned cold. At the same time, Yuyi was also very lucky in his heart. He is so lucky to have grown to this day. If Yuyi was not born as a little white snake, Orochimaru would not have thought highly of his body and was always thinking about Sasuke, then he would have died long ago. Originally, Yuyi felt a little uneasy and guilty about the recent killings. After all, Yuyi was just an ordinary person in his previous life, and he was reborn as a snake in this life. He killed people just to survive, and he had no choice. But at this moment, all the uneasiness disappeared. If Yuyi was not cruel, if he had not killed the enemy wantonly, obtained a large number of evolutionary genes, and grew rapidly to this point, I am afraid that now, his position and Orochimaru's position will be reversed, and Yuyi will be the fish on the chopping board, and let Orochimaru slaughter him. The weak are the original sin. Because you are weak, you deserve to be bullied. Yuyi took a deep breath, suppressed all the thoughts in his heart, said no more, and opened his mouth to spit. A millstone-sized flame spiral ball, with a hot air wave, slammed into Orochimaru who was waiting for the kill. Crackling! The flames rose, and Orochimaru soon became a human-shaped torch. In the blazing fire, the breath of life gradually left. With a plop, Orochimaru's body fell to the ground. From his remaining body, wisps of chakra floated out and were sucked into Yuyi's stomach. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring the chakra of a senior Kage and obtaining 100,000 devouring evolution genes. This made Yuyi a little surprised. He didn't expect that absorbing the chakra of a senior Kage level strongman would be comparable to the blood limit of Sakon and Yukon. However, now is not the time to think about these. At this moment, Yuyi has accumulated a lot of evolution genes and started the journey of continuous evolution again. A force far greater than any previous evolution, like a tsunami, flows through every meridian in the body, and the meridians that originally looked okay immediately become congested. Pain. Unprecedented pain. From cells to muscle fibers, from inside to outside, Yuyi feels a tearing pain, as if countless hands are tearing his body apart. Cell division is faster, bones are harder, meridians are expanded and thickened, blood flows more smoothly, and muscle fibers are tighter. Yuyi's body is further growing, from 90 meters, a little bit longer, until 100 meters, and finally stops. Yuyi sheds a layer of old snake skin, and the new snake body is still stained with some mucus, like pearls, reflecting a beautiful brilliance in the sun. Yuyi feels that this evolution has achieved great results, as if he has been reborn. He immediately opens the system personal information and takes a look. System goal: help the host evolve into the infinite snake of the universe. Current world: Naruto. Host: Yuyi. Species: White Python. Age: under 1 year old, ultimate form. Lifespan, 100 years. Evolutionary gene, 8000/20,000. Level, LV200. Language, snake language, human language, only for Naruto. Talent, primary devouring, intermediate fire affinity, intermediate earth affinity. Abilities, strengthened fangs, strengthened skin, primary regeneration. Overall evaluation, initially stepping into the level of penumbra, hope to make persistent efforts, the infinite snake of the world has just begun, follow the footsteps of the system, and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. Sure enough. Yu Yi's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. This time, Yu Yi killed Orochimaru and the 4 Otonin, and directly jumped from the elite Jonin to the level of penumbra. At the same time, Yu Yi's body of the white python grew to the ultimate form, and was about to reach the ceiling, which cast a lot of shadows on him. Evolving to the ultimate form means killing ninjas of the same level and obtaining fewer evolutionary genes. And if you continue to move up from the ultimate form, it is the super ultimate form, which reaches the end of the evolution of the white python, that is, the level of the white snake sage. Then, there is nothing else. Unless Yu Yi swallows the complete form of the 10 tails, he can get a leap in the essence of life, otherwise, he will be trapped in the race of the white python for the rest of his life, and his strength will not improve. Yu Yi shook his head. For him now, it is too early to think about these things. He checked the tasks issued by the system before. Hidden mission, my fate is in my own hands. Rare. Second stage mission, be arrogant and wreak havoc. Completed. Mission description, who stipulated that the snake of all worlds must follow the rules and be a down-to-earth good guy. On the day of the official competition of the Chunin exam, wreak havoc as much as you can. The more important the original characters you kill, the more damage you do to Konoha village, and the higher the score. Under review. Kill important characters in the original, Akimichi Choza, Yamanaka Inoichi, Narashikaku, the Sound 4, and Orochimaru. Destruction level, 1/3 of the west side of Konoha village was burned down. Final score, 66, out of 100. Host, do you want to settle the account? Chapter 47. Yuya was somewhat excited about completing the task for the first time to pass the line. I don't know what treasure chest I will draw next. Yuya said without hesitation. Settlement now. The sound of the system prompts echoed in my mind. Bite. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a king's treasure chest. Yuya was suddenly shocked. Although I only received a treasure chest as a reward for completing the mission this time, the gold content far exceeded any previous harvest. As mentioned before, the levels of treasure chests are divided into black iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, star, king, emperor, legend, epic, legend, and myth. Previously, the highest level treasure chest that Yuya obtained was just a gold treasure chest. Originally, Yuya had already raised his expectations of possible gains by completing the mission to the passing mark this time, but he never expected to get the king's treasure box. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Yuya exhaled deeply, calmed down the excitement in his heart, and then opened the treasure box. As soon as he lifted a corner of the treasure chest, Yu Yi's heart skipped a beat and he secretly thought, oh no. Because this time when I opened it, no precious light appeared. Bite. Congratulations to the host, for obtaining the slave psychic contract. At this moment, Yuya seemed to feel the strong malice of the world. What kind of experience is it like to fall from the altar of European emperors back to African chieftains? Yuya said, I really advise you to be a good person. I fall. Staring at the enslavement psychic scroll in front of him, which looked not much different from the psychic beast contract, Yuya was speechless for a long time, a little choked. Really? Uncle Snake is my true love, ah, no, is he my god of luck? For a moment, Nato felt a little regretful for killing Orochimaru so early. Of course, Yuya only lost consciousness for a short time and then came back to his senses. If he could do it all over again, Nato would still kill Orochimaru quickly, without any hesitation. If you're not a chief, just be a non-chief. Let's see how rubbish this thing can be. With a tone of self-disclosure and abandonment, Yuya checked the newly acquired props. Slavery psychic contract, sign an unequal contract with a human, and you will be able to enslave a human and share your talents with the other person. Note, the premise is that the other party must be willing. Tasteless. Extremely useless. Seeing the introduction of the props, Yuya almost fainted. What is the use of this thing if he wants it? If he were still a human, he might be very happy to enslave a beautiful girl, such as Tsunade, Terumi Mei, Anko and other top beauties, and then do some exercises that you know and I know. However, Yuya is a snake in this life, I'll throw him away. There is no need to think about the sexual life of human beings, and Yuya has no tools to commit crimes. Even if his upper body has ideas, his lower body can't do anything. I really talked too much and it brought tears to my eyes. Yuya shook his head and threw away the distracting thoughts in his mind. Now that things have developed to the point where they are now, there is no use in feeling sorry for yourself. The top priority is to put this waste prop to use, so that his hard work will not be wasted. This prop, called the Slavery Psychic Scroll, is similar to the Psychic Beast Contract Scroll. The contractor can use psychic techniques to summon Nato's body. However, compared to the equal status of the Psychic Beast Contract, the humans in the contract are enslaved. However, what is lost is what is harvested, and the enslaved can share Yuyi's innate abilities. As long as they give up their dignity, even a loser can counterattack in an instant. Thinking like this, a figure fell into Yuyi's mind. The decision is yours. Konoha Village, Ninja Hospital. The walls and ceilings of the corridors shimmer with white light, reflecting the unique solemnity of the hospital, and the terrazzo floors are filled with the smell of soda water. Due to the sudden war, the number of injured increased sharply, and the corridors were crowded with people. Injured ninjas were hanging, nurses pushing carts, and relatives of the injured shouting. The original peaceful atmosphere of the hospital was broken, and it became like a vegetable market. Ward number 303. Suzuki was wrapped in white bandages, looking like a mummy, with a sling bottle hanging on his arm. Suzuki had been lying on the hospital bed for a whole week. Although the skin injuries that Nato had caused him had been rescued by medical ninjas and were almost healed, the internal injuries could not be cured. The doctor concluded that he would spend the rest of his life in a hospital bed. Sakura looked haggard, sitting on a stool, peeling an apple for Suzuki, and murmured. Suzuki, when will you recover? Do you know, my mother came to me again today to complain about tomorrow's medical and hospital bills. My mother said that you are already a useless person and have no hope for the rest of your life. She told me to stop caring about your life and death. Suzuki, I feel really bad right now. Our family is just an ordinary family and we cannot afford your daily medical expenses. But I am also afraid that if you don't have this money, will your injuries worsen and you will die. Suzuki, can you tell me, what should I do next? As she talked, Sakura cried unhappily. Big tears rolled down along the beautiful outline, falling on the knife and the peeled apple. Suzuki lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling with his eyes wide open, lifeless, without answering Sakura's questions. Ever since that day, when Suzuki learned from the doctor that he would spend the rest of his life in bed, he became what he is now, not caring about anything. Sakura was not surprised to see Sasuke's character. This scene had been repeated countless times in the past week, and it had worn out her remaining patience. Once, Suzuki was a genius in the class, handsome, and a dazzling star, so she could only look up to him and have admiration for him. But now, Suzuki is just a useless person who can't even speak. The pressure from his parents, the strange eyes of people around him, and Sasuke's silent response seemed to be the last straw that broke the camel's back, and Sakura made the final decision. Sakura stood up, put the peeled apple on the table, and said. Suzuki, I'm sorry, I'm just an ordinary girl. Today is the last time I visit you. I won't come again. I hope you can take care of yourself. After that, Sakura turned and left resolutely with tears on her face. This scene deeply stimulated Suzuki. On the hospital bed, Suzuki, who seemed to be a vegetable, suddenly had a touch of color in his eyes, and his body trembled violently, making the bed creak, and his throat seemed to be torn, making a creepy sound. He he he. He he he. Chapter 48. Konoha Village, Ninja Hospital, Room 303. This ward is very spacious and quiet, with a pink-white roof, pale white walls, and simple furnishings. There are 2 beds, 4 stools, and a vase of flowers on the bedside table. Ho ho ho! Ho ho ho! Suzuki was lying on the hospital bed, his voice was like a night owl, shrill and unpleasant, with deep despair. Suzuki looked at the grey ceiling, the pure white to dull color, and the faint smell of disinfectant in his nose. He wanted to raise his arm and touch the peeled apple left by Sakura. After several attempts, he couldn't lift it. Get up and lie down on the bed dejectedly. This made him feel deeply frustrated. At this moment, the door to the ward opened again. Sasuke's ears twitched slightly, and there was a hope in his heart that he couldn't even describe, looking forward to Sakura's return. However, reality slapped Sasuke hard. The visitors were several injured young men, who looked about the same age as Sasuke. They helped each other and sat on the hospital bed next to Sasuke. At this time, Konoha village suddenly encountered war. There were many such patients, and every ward in the ninja hospital was packed. Sasuke couldn't help feeling disappointed and sighed in his heart. Several injured young people, including a arrogant and ruffian-looking kid, took a few glances at Sasuke's hospital bed. The more they looked at it, the more familiar it became, and they finally recognized Sasuke. He walked up and looked at Sasuke bandaged up like a mummy, and couldn't help but said jokingly, "Hey, everyone, come and take a look. Isn't this the original genius Sasuke? How did he become such a virtuous person?" The angry kid made a sound, which immediately attracted the attention of his companions. "Yamamoto, what did you say?" The kid named Yamamoto pointed at Sasuke unceremoniously and said to his companions, "I heard early on that Sasuke, the genius at our school, will be a waste for the rest of his life. I never expected that we would be so destined to meet here." Yamamoto's companions came forward one after another, as if watching the orangutans in the zoo, pointing and commenting on Sasuke. "Tch, I thought he was a genius, but it turns out he can get hurt too, ha ha ha. Isn't that right? I remember when I was in the ninja school, I asked him how to throw kunao, but he turned his back on me. God is really wise now, things are changing. Look at his eyes. Are he unhappy with us? Come on, come and hit me. Can't you hit me? Ha ha ha." Watching him build a tall building, watching him entertain guests, watching his building collapse. People like to create gods, and even more like the death of aloof gods. When people see the dazzling geniuses in the past reduced to a paralyzed waste state, people often have no pity, only endless ridicule and ridicule. Sasuke pursed his lips tightly, his pupils already bloodshot, staring straight at Yamamoto and the others. Yamamoto walked to the hospital bed, picked up the apple that Sakura had peeled for Sasuke, nodded carelessly, and said, "Tisk, tisk, such a good apple, it would be a waste to give it to a waste like you, so I accepted it without mercy." Click. 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 Yamamoto's silver-white teeth gnawed open the apple, and the sweet juice flowed into his mouth. It felt sweet with a slight sour taste, which gave it a unique taste. Yamamoto was a little surprised and said, "Hey, these apples are pretty good." This scene was reflected in Sasuke's pupils, making him so angry that his chest heaved violently, and his lungs were like a leaky bellows. He was gasping for air. The three Megatama Sharingan opened at some point and stared at Yamamoto. This is the apple that Sakura peeled for him. How dare he eat it? Yamamoto noticed Sasuke's ferocious look and was slightly frightened, almost losing his grip on the apple. But then he remembered that the other party was already a cripple and could not even stand up. Why should he be afraid of him? Thinking like this, Yamamoto suddenly became jealous and threw away the flowers in the bottle beside the bed, twisted the bottle and turned it upside down, splashing the water on Sasuke's face. "I want you to stare at me." Wow! Wow! The cold water splashed down, wetting Sasuke's face, as well as the pillow and quilt. Yamamoto's partner was startled and asked, "Yamamoto, what are you doing?" Yamamoto shook the vase hatefully and dripped the little water left on Sasuke, with no trace of jealousy in his eyes, and said, "Sasuke, this kid, didn't look down on us when he was in school. I'm going to show him some color now. No, look, what else can this loser do besides staring at us?" When Yamamoto's partner heard this, he suddenly felt that it made sense. In addition, Sasuke was just as rumored. He couldn't even speak, let alone move, which immediately aroused malice in their hearts. A person who is not envied by others is a mediocre person, but when a once brilliant genius falls from the altar, he is bullied by dogs and bullied by those villains who once looked down upon him. Yamamoto is right. When I was in school, I had long been unhappy with Sasuke. That's right, why is he so popular with girls? He's just a pretty boy who relies on women to make ends meet. The more they talked, the more angry they became, so they started to move their hands and punched Sasuke one after another. Woo! Woo! Sasuke's pupils widened and he was extremely angry. He wanted to use the 3 Megatama Sharingan to perform genjutsu to make these guys look good. However, once chakra circulates in his body, it is like a knife cutting, causing severe pain, and he cannot perform any illusions at all. I hate it. Being bullied by these trash that he once looked down upon, Sasuke's heart was filled with anger. A gust of wind roared into the small ward through the window, as if a typhoon had set off inside, lifting the quilts and making Yamamoto and others unable to stand firm. What the hell? Why is there such a strong wind? Yamamoto cursed, then looked at the window, and was stunned. I saw that one side of a huge snake head filled the entire view of the window, and a snake eye as big as a lantern looked at Yamamoto and the others with a humane and playful look, as if looking at a clown. Holy shit! Yamamoto and the others were just the bottom students in the ninja school. They barely became genin and were just messing around. They had never seen such a huge white python like Nato. They were so frightened that they fell to the ground with their legs. It leaked all over the floor, and the smell was unpleasant. Yamamoto and the others didn't care about their face. They turned around, got down on all fours, crawled and rolled out of the door and ran away. They were so embarrassed. Nato didn't bother to take action against these rubbish. His eyes met Sasuke's in mid-air, and with a bewitching tone, he said, "Sasuke, do you crave power?" Chapter 49. When Sasuke saw Yuya again, his heart was a little complicated. Should I hate you yet? After all, he was the one who caused such serious injuries to himself. But in Sasuke's heart, he couldn't bring up the slightest hatred for Nato. The job of a ninja is to dance with your head on the tip of a knife. If you are not careful, you will die. At that time, one man and one snake were on opposing sides, so naturally they should do their best to kill their opponents. Sasuke asked himself, if it were him, he would kill the giant white python in front of him mercilessly to avoid future troubles. Sasuke hates it. But I don't hate you yet, nor do I hate Sakura for leaving, nor do I hate those clowns for bullying me just now. He hates himself. Weakness is the original sin. Because you are weak, you deserve to be bullied. If he hadn't been so weak at the beginning, he wouldn't have been injured like this by Nato. If he wasn't so weak, he wouldn't be bullied by those trash. If he hadn't been so weak, he would never have watched that man leave in style on the night when his family was exterminated. As for doubting Yuyi's motives, Sasuke had indeed suspected it, but he couldn't figure out what a giant white python wanted to do with him even if he broke his head. Could it be because he is old and doesn't take a shower? So, when Yuya said that sentence in a bewitching tone, "Sasuke, do you crave power?" Sasuke's throat moved up and down, like a rusty piece of iron rubbing against glass, making a harsh and hoarse voice as he spoke with difficulty. "I want strength." Yuya smiled, and his huge snake face smiled, looking extremely sinister and ferocious. Nato opened his mouth, and the scarlet snake letter shot out like a bullet, rolled up the slave psychic contract, placed it in front of Sasuke, and said, "As long as a little bit of your blood is stuck on it, we can make a contract." Seeing that the contract scroll in front of him was almost the same as the psychic beast contract, Sasuke hesitated for a moment, and then a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Sasuke couldn't move, and the blood-taking project naturally fell on Nato. The snake letter was forked, and the tip of the letter was as sharp as a dagger. He lightly scratched Sasuke's arm, and the blood he obtained fell on the slave psychic scroll. In an instant, the brilliance was dazzling. The enslavement psychic scroll turned into 2 balls of light, each shot at the forehead of one person and one snake, and merged into each other's minds, forming a special bonding relationship. A flash of understanding flashed in Sasuke's eyes. From the light ball, he already knew that he could share Nato's innate ability. Among them, the ability of primary regeneration is exactly what he urgently needs now. Without any hesitation, Sasuke immediately consumed a lot of energy and began primary regeneration. Then, Sasuke passed out gorgeously due to exhaustion. It's a long story, but really, it's just something you can do in 5 minutes. There was no need for the few kiddies who ran out of the ward to report. The appearance of such a huge snake body as Yuya in the village immediately caused panic among the surrounding villagers, and a sharp alarm suddenly sounded in the air. "Sasuke!" The door was violently kicked open, and Kakashi's figure rushed in like a gust of wind. When he saw Sasuke fainting, Kakashi's eyes suddenly became sharp. He looked at Nato's snake eyes through the window with murderous intent and said coldly, "What did you do to Sasuke?" Nato moved his head away from the window to prevent Kakashi from suddenly bursting out and blowing out his eyes. Seeing Kakashi's anxious expression as if he was protecting a calf, Nato looked relaxed and said, "If I said I was just passing by, would you believe it? This nonsense can't even be deceived by a child." Kakashi took out the kunao from the bag at his waist, opened the forehead protector covering the Sharingan, assumed a fighting posture, and said coldly, "Konoha village does not welcome a guy like you who has an unknown purpose." Being in a crowded hospital, Kakashi did not dare to fight Nato here to avoid causing innocent casualties. He hoped that Nato could retreat. Kakashi throws a rat weapon, so why not Nato? Now, without the sound ninja to attract firepower for him, he sneaked into the hinterland of Konoha village by himself, but he was taking a lot of risks. Nato and Kakashi looked at each other, reaching a silent understanding, and each side took a step back. In Yuyi's thermal energy induction, a large number of ninjas were approaching the medical side in a radius of 1 kilometer. Yuya understood that it was time for him to retire after his success. He took a deep look at Kakashi and said meaningfully, "We will meet again." Immediately afterwards, before a large number of ninja teams arrived, Yuya used the technique of reverse channeling, and circles of complex runes appeared under his body. With a bang and a burst of green smoke, the huge figure disappeared from the place and returned. "Go to Longdi Cave." Whoosh! 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 The silhouettes of ninjas fell from the eaves to the entrance of the hospital like dumplings falling into the water. They were swarming around, but they were a step too late, and they didn't even catch Yuyi's shadow. Longdi Cave. It's still the same here. Looking around, everything is lush green, with towering giant trees, dense bushes, and various well-known and unknown beasts recuperating in the forest. A forest wolf was on all fours, running fast, chasing the reindeer running in front of it. But at this moment, circles of complex spells appeared on the ground in front of them, accompanied by a burst of thick smoke. From inside, there was an aura that made the forest wolf's hair stand on end. The reindeer in front was crushed to death by Yuya before he could react, leaving no trace behind. Ouch! Oh! The forest wolf originally wanted to stand up, but when he saw the huge figure appearing in front of him, he was immediately frightened and immediately turned into a wolf. He simply dug a hole in the ground with his front paws and buried his head deep inside. Come on, out of sight and out of mind. How desperate this must be. Yuya looked at the forest wolf below with amusement, facing the soil and its tail towards the blue sky, shivering, not daring to say anything, not daring to ask anything. Yuya almost died laughing at the opponent's AQ spirit. Nowadays, Yuya is no longer the weak Yuya. Not to mention eating this forest wolf, there is no evolutionary gene to be obtained. Its small body alone is not enough for Yuya to fill the gap between his teeth. Nato generously spared the life of the forest wolf and turned to look at the previous system's mission. Dragon Earth Cave Domination Mission. Task description: as the infinite snake of the world in the future, how can you allow yourself to be eaten by mermaids? Open your bloody mouth, show your fangs, start conquering Longdi Cave and become the overlord of Longdi Cave. The third stage mission: kill 10,000 snakes and become the overlord of 10,000 Snakes Cave in Longdi Cave. Mission reward: 1 silver treasure chest, 1 gold treasure chest, 1 platinum treasure chest. The scene when 10,000 snakes attacked him seemed like just yesterday. A hint of murderous intent flashed in Yu Yi's eyes, and he said coldly, "Wan Shi, I'm back again." Chapter 50. 3 days later. In Longdi Cave, in a valley somewhere in Wan Shi Cave. The soft morning light penetrated into the forest, melting the white mist in the forest and livening up the birds and insects under the trees. If you approach this valley, you will hear a strange sound from afar, filling your ears with strange sounds, making you feel goosebumps all over your body and feel extremely uncomfortable. After passing through the dense forests, the valley in front of you suddenly opened up. Looking over, within a radius of 10 miles, there were layers and layers of dense snakes, green, white, black, and all kinds of them. The mottled, large and small snakes were entangled with each other, constantly surging, and the red snake tongues stretched and trembled, and the sound of hissing resonance was endless. Snakes pressed on snakes, snakes were close to snakes, and they were entangled with each other, forming a pile of snake mountains. What a creepy scene! Everyone knows that snakes are silver, and it is time to reproduce again. And in the depths of the valley, a 120-meter-long behemoth was crouching and coiling, basking in the sun leisurely. Under the sun, its purple scales were shimmering and rugged, looking particularly beautiful, emitting a mysterious and intoxicating light. It was the absolute king of the 10,000 snake cave, occupying the most comfortable position. No snake dared to approach it, and the surrounding area was quiet for 100 meters. Ha! The 10,000 snakes opened their bloody mouths and yawned. Their steel-like fangs were exposed to the air, ferocious and sharp, with a cold light flashing. Whoosh! 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 At this time, a figure in the distance crawled over quickly, passing through the piles of snakes, and entered the sight of the 10,000 snakes at a very fast speed. A grey-brown python rushed out of the forest, 20 meters long, with a pair of inverted triangular eyes emitting cold light, and a slender snake tongue hissing and swallowing non-stop. When Wan Shi saw this grey-brown python, his expression changed slightly. Since the sneak attack on Yu Yi failed, Wan Shi has been squatting at the place where Yu Yi disappeared for 3 days and 3 nights, but nothing was found. It knows that Yu Yi dare not return to Longdi Cave in a short time. So, as the king of Wan Shi Cave, Wan Shi sent his men to squat at the place where Yu Yi disappeared day and night, and report here as soon as there is any situation. And this grey-brown python is one of the secret sentries set up by Wan Shi at the beginning. Since it has arrived, it is obvious that something has happened. The 20-meter-long grey-brown python is comparable to a chunin outside, but when it comes to Wan Shi, it is more than a head shorter. It crawled on the ground respectfully, with its cold inverted triangular eyes lowered, its head lowered, and its snake tongue hissing. Hiss, hiss, hiss. It was like Morse code. Ordinary people didn't understand what it was saying at all. After all, it was speaking snake language. The 10,000 snakes naturally understood it, their faces changed slightly, their pupils burst into a fierce light, and an extremely angry look climbed onto their faces. That guy Yu Yi actually dared to come back. Hehe, I want to see who gave him the courage. The upper body of the 10,000 snakes stood up, a strong, domineering, and sinister aura emerged spontaneously, and suddenly raised his head to the sky and let out a low groan, which was about to break the sky. Hiss! The Snake King gave an order, and the snakes in the entire valley dared not disobey. The snakes that were originally entangled together and indistinguishable suddenly stopped moving, raised their flat snake heads in the direction of the 10,000 snakes, and stretched their snakes to listen to the order. Wan Shi looked down from above, and with satisfaction, he swept the snakes present. A grim smile appeared on his lips, and he said, "Little ones, follow me and kill Yu Yi, the ignorant guy." The response to Wan Shi was the sound of snakes soaring into the sky. Hiss! 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 Thousands of snakes hissed together, and it sounded like thunder resounding through the valley, and the lingering sound was endless. Blue, white, grey-brown, cobra, green leaf green, giant python. All kinds of snakes rushed out of the valley under the command of Wan Shi, forming a tidal wave. Wherever they passed, everything was afraid and dared not compete with them. Rumble! 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 It was like summer thunder, and it was like a loud sound like beating a drum, penetrating through the layers of trees in the forest. Wherever the snakes spread, trees along the way broke one after another, with constant rumbling sounds and smoke and dust rising several feet high. Some beasts that could not dodge were either crushed into slag or fell into the stomachs of the snakes and became food. The beasts in the forest were even more terrified by the snakes and rushed out in a hurry. For a while, a magnificent beast tide was formed. The 10,000 snakes had no intention of hiding at all, just to tell Yu Yi directly. "I'm here, you can do whatever you want." So domineering, so confident. Looking down from a high altitude, the beast tide fled in 3 directions, with different numbers of beasts in the east, west, and north. Only in the south, no beast dared to step into that area, as if it was the domain of another king, and they were not allowed to trample on it. And the direction of the snake army's attack was exactly the south. In a field surrounded by towering trees and ancient vines, a giant white python coiled around a tree. Its huge snake head looked up and saw the overwhelming swarm of snakes coming from afar. Yu Yi smiled. "This Wan Shi guy really put on a good show for me." Yu Yi's words were full of relaxed and freehand words, and he looked at the turbulent group of snakes in front of him as if they were nothing. If it were another giant python, facing thousands of snakes, it would probably be unable to defeat 4 hands with 2 fists, and would be submerged alive in the sea of snakes, chewing them all away. But Yu Yi is no ordinary white python. Yu Yi opened his mouth, the blazing heat condensed, and with a breath, small fireballs as big as fists fell like heavy rain, drawing semicircular arcs in the air and falling into the surrounding forests. Wood makes a fire, a spark. Once the wood is burning, it will burst into flames in a short while, and soon it will become a prairie fire, with thick smoke billowing everywhere. Call! 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 The fire shot into the sky, turning half the sky red in an instant. Deep in the secluded forest, all the birds and beasts are hiding, and the murderous atmosphere is slowly spreading. However, facing the roaring sea of fire in front of them, the snakes did not waver at all. Under the severe urging of the snakes behind them, their snake eyes burst out with crazy looks, twisting their snake bodies like crazy, and roared into the sea of fire. Poof! 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 The snake at the front was burned by the fire and fell to the ground forever, but the snake at the back remained unmoved and continued to move forward on the corpse of its companion, extinguishing the flames in front with its own flesh and blood. How cruel! Chapter 51. Rumble! 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 The ground shook violently, and the snakes looked at death with great force, like locusts crossing the border and rushing into the sea of fire. They used their flesh and blood to extinguish the flames bit by bit. Under the impact of their sacrifice of life, a bloody path was forcibly opened up. The snakes swarmed past, leaving behind charred snake carcasses on the ground, exuding a strange smell of coke and barbecue, which was a bit pungent. Looking down from a high altitude, the snakes were like the tip of a sharp knife, piercing into the heart of the sea of fire with an indomitable momentum, and rushed in front of Yuya fiercely. Subsequently, the group of snakes is like a sea, as if they were cut in half with scissors. They automatically give way to both sides. Snakes of different shapes hang down their heads and scream. They are preparing to welcome their king. Under the gaze of pairs of cold and ruthless snake eyes, on a red carpet paved with massive snake corpses, Wan Shi's huge purple figure appeared from the depths of the snake group, swaying with a waist thick enough for 10 people to hold it, and walked slowly come forward. The snakes are 120 meters long, like an extended version of Lincoln in the car, surrounded by snakes in the center like stars holding the moon, like an emperor among snakes, adding a kingly temperament, high and majestic. Wan Shi came to a stop 1,000 meters away from Yu Yat, their eyes facing each other, full of gunpowder. The moment he saw Yu Yat, Wan Shi almost felt that he had recognized the wrong snake. More than a week ago, Yu Yat was only 80 meters long. After not seeing him for a short time, he actually grew to 100 meters. Even 10,000 snakes would be amazed. Among psychic beasts, except for a few rare cases, there is a general rule: the larger the size, the stronger the strength. Originally, Wan Shi thought that Yu Ye was still an ant that could be crushed to death as before. He never expected that Yu Ye now had the ability to threaten its life. This made Wan Shi hesitate a little. Wan Shi has always been unwilling to do anything to gain her advantage. She is thinking, is it worthwhile to kill Yu Ye now? 10,000 snakes and tigers were lying on the ground like a dragon, looking a little lazy, but as soon as the words came out, their arrogant nature was exposed, saying, "NATO, I'll give you a chance to choose. Surrender, or die." Yu Ye smiled. He raised the corners of his mouth, revealing his fangs like knives. His orange eyes looked at Wan Shi provocatively and said, "Just you." The tone was full of contempt. "The underlying meaning is that you are not qualified." Wan Shi's expression remained unchanged, and if possible, it did not want to make a big move, but after all, it was related to the ownership of Wan Shi Cave and its status in Longdi Cave, and there was no possibility of it retreating. The upper body of Wan Snake stood upright, like a purple iron tower standing on the ground. A hint of cunning flashed deep in the snake's eyes, and said in a deep voice, "That's right, just me. It's too late to say it, but it's soon." Before Wan Shi could finish his words, a giant tail as thick as a stone pillar broke through the ground from behind Yu Yat, carrying the force of thunder, and thunderbolts swept across. The smile on Yu Yi's lips did not diminish. He sneered and said, "It's the same old routine as last time. Do you think I will be fooled again?" For an old shady guy like Wan Shi, Yu Ye had suffered a loss once and had already been very wary. Before the giant tail could get closer, he swept his snake tail on the ground, like a heavy hammer, hitting Wan Shi's giant tail hard. On the tail. Bang! Amidst the dull loud noise, thousands of snakes were in pain and screamed. "Young boys, come on!" The Snake King gave an order, and the group of snakes surged, densely packed and neatly, as if they had poked a honeycomb, and rushed toward Yu Yat. How dare a mere ragtag group of people compete with the sun and the moon? Yu Ye roared angrily, a flash of yellow swept across the ground, and the whole ground suddenly shook 3 times. Convex! 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 The ferocious ground thorns were like antelope horns emerging from the ground, piercing straight into the belly of the snakes. Prick! 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 The belly of the snake is the weakest, like a thin film, and a thorn can be inserted into it in an instant. Snake corpses hung high on the spikes of the ground like clothes hanging out, dripping with blood and smelling foul. At the same time, from the surrounding burning forest, flames turned into fiery snakes, suddenly shot out, rushed into the sea of snakes desperately, and then exploded one by one with a bang. The sound of explosions and the sounds of snakes are mixed together. As for the enemies of Yu Ye and Wan Shi, they faced each other early in the morning and fought to the death. The blazing sea of fire on the left suddenly exploded, and 2 similar giant pythons struggled and rushed out of the sea of fire, biting each other, with blood all over their bodies. Wan Shi's elegant purple scales were violently exploded, and the exposed flesh showed grey-black gunpowder smoke. It was obviously exploded by Yu Ye using a flame spiral pill. As the saying goes, if you injure the enemy 1000, you will lose 800. While inflicting serious injuries on Wan Shi, Yu Ye also suffered a retaliatory blow from Wan Shi. The pure white scales on his body were picked out by the fangs, and 2 holes were opened less than 10 meters away from the snake's head. A dark hole, with red blood gurgling out. With a taller snake head, Wan Shi looked down at Yu Ye proudly and said coldly, "With your level, you still want to challenge me?" Yu Ye was not stimulated by Wan Shi's words. Who knew what the other party was planning? Yu Ye's eyes were like knives, his face was calm, and he said, "I'll give you one more word. With your level, you still want to kill me?" The next moment, Yu Ye used primary regeneration, and his abdomen spasmed. The prey he had caught in the past 3 days was quickly digested at this moment, turning into streams of energy to repair his injuries. Then, a scene that shocked Wan Shi appeared. However, he saw that the 2 dark holes in Yu Ye's body that were pierced by Wan Shi's sharp teeth actually drilled out strips of flesh buds, swaying and twisting each other, and reforming tight muscle fibers. After a while, the holes were filled with new muscles, revealing brand new fresh meat. Except for the lack of scales, everything looked very normal. How is this possible? Wan Shi was stunned and astonished. It has lived for so many years, and this is the first time it has seen a snake with healing ability comparable to that of the slug family. Wan Shi looked down at his own injuries, and then looked at Yu Ye's body that had recovered as before. It's not a fool, of course it understands that Yu Ye's healing ability must have limits. But it doesn't dare to gamble. Wan Shi knows that if it continues to fight, even if it kills Yu Ye, it will probably leave permanent injuries. So, Wan Shi didn't hesitate and turned around and ran away. What is moral integrity? Can it be eaten? Chapter 52. There are 2 kinds of people in this world that you must not mess with, one is the villain, and the other is the woman. Obviously, although Wan Shi is not a human being, he still belongs to the category of villain. Wan Shi has always been willing to wait until there is no advantage. After learning that Yu Ye had a quick cure method, in a short period of time, he weighed the pros and cons and turned around and ran away without the slightest bit of kingly demeanor. Yu Ye's eyes flashed, and he understood Wan Shi's concerns in an instant, and secretly admired its decision, but immediately after, there was a strong murderous intention. He absolutely cannot let go of this old bastard Wan Shi. As the saying goes, one mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers, unless there is 1 male and 1 female. If Wan Shi was a female, Yu Ye might even keep him alive and keep him for breeding or something. But today, between the 2 sides, only one snake is destined to survive. Yu Ye's huge and hard snake body rubbed violently with the ground while crawling, making a slight rumbling sound. The speed became faster and faster. In a few breaths, he was less than 50 meters away from Wan Snake. "Wan Shi, where are you running?" Yu Ye roared violently, and the snake's body bowed, as if a spring was tightening, and it shot out like an arrow from the string, flew towards Wan Shi, and bit Wan Shi's back. Bite! Yu Ye's strengthened fangs seemed to be biting on the skin made of gold and stone steel bars, making a crisp sound of the handover of gold and steel. Sparks flew everywhere, leaving a row of tooth marks on the purple scales. This shows how thick and tough its leather armor is. Wan Shi's physical defense was so terrifying. Yu Ye was not surprised at all, he just took advantage of the situation and entangled Wan Shi's snake body. To Wan Shi, Yu Yi's bite was just an itch, but when Yu Yi wrapped around him directly, it was tantamount to a slap in the face. Nato, you are looking for death. All snakes are angry. Since it has grown step by step to where it is today, in the entire Longdi cave, except for the white snake immortal, no snake has dared to be so rude to it. After Wan Snake realized that Yu Yi didn't want him to leave, he suddenly became fierce, and he also entangled Yu Yi. Python wraps around python. Wan Shi's eyes were cold and bloodthirsty, and he said, Nato, I will make you regret messing with me. Wan Shi didn't even think about it, he opened his big mouth and turned back to bite Yu Yi. Click! 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 Amidst a blood-curdling gnawing sound, Yu Yi's strengthened skin turned out to be as brittle as paper in front of the fangs of thousands of snakes that could break stone and metal. 2 fist-sized holes were pierced again, which was shocking. From the bite wound, bright red blood gushes out like a spring, and Nato Ye hisses in pain. What a wonderful night! Yu Ye endured the severe pain in his body, and his body burned with flames, which continued to roast Wan Snake's body at close range. At the same time, he opened his mouth and sprayed out a flaming spiral pill as big as a millstone, directly in front of Wan Snake. The snake's face smacked it in the face. Boom! The flame rays Nan rotated rapidly, with full destructive power, comparable to the destructive power of A-level ninjutsu, and directly smashed Wan Shi's mouth. This is disfiguring. Wan Shi only felt that for a moment, the blazing fire spread across his entire field of vision, and then he felt a burning pain on his face, especially his crooked lower jaw, which seriously affected his bite force. Hiss! Wan Shi let out a shocking scream of pain, but it aroused the ferocious nature in his body. It bit Yu Yi's body like crazy. The snake's body was even bigger than Yu Yi's, carrying a huge amount of power. It tightly wrapped around Yu Yi, tightening it bit by bit, trying to pull Yu Yi down. His body was crushed into slag inch by inch and foot by foot. Click! 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 Under the crushing force of Wan Shi's thick snake body, Yu Yi's slender and strong white snake body seemed to turn into noodles. There was a crisp sound of bones exploding in the body. It was hard to imagine how Yu Yi would end up. What a trauma! Undoubtedly, in the contest of strength, Yu Yi suffered. But Yu Yi has more means than Wan Shi. A flash of yellow light smeared across the ground, and ground thorns as thick as buckets suddenly rushed out from the ground, piercing the flat ground under Wan Shi. The peaks were as sharp as knives. Convex! 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 Click! 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 Wan Shi is worthy of being one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the entire ninja world, and her body is extremely strong. The ground thorns that Yu Yi carefully prepared for it not only failed to break through the defense, but instead the tips of the ground thorns were dented, and each one shattered and fell. There was rubble everywhere. Yu Yi didn't care at all. He had expected this. If Wan Shi was so easy to kill, Wan Snake wouldn't be called Wan Snake. Yu Yi has enough patience and confidence to continue spending time with Wan Shi. If it doesn't work once, just do it again. If it doesn't work, just keep going. There are always more solutions than difficulties. You have to make your own way, and nothing is achieved overnight. Good thing. This damn bastard. Wan Shi was angry and anxious, obviously knowing Yu Yi's plan. Yu Yi is going to rely on primary regeneration to fight a war of attrition with Wan Shi. In a war of attrition, what is fought is the willpower of both sides, and what is fought is their respective heritage. Once a war of attrition begins, it will not stop until one side is defeated. What a huge hatred, what a huge grudge. My brother Ye in the society is a ruthless man who doesn't talk much. All the snakes are about to cry. If it had known that Yu Yi was so cruel, it should have chased him all the way to the ninja realm, and beat Yu Yi to death when he was still young, so as to eliminate future troubles. Could this be the legendary, the waves behind the Yangtze River push the waves in front, and the waves in front die on the beach? Both sides used various means, became ruthless, entangled with each other, wrestled together, and rolled into a big meat mountain. The two sides fought from the east to the west, and from the south to the north. The sound of violent collisions continued, and the muddy soil was plowed over and over again. The ground was full of snake corpses affected by both sides, which had long been broken and deformed, and some even seemed to be crushed by tires, leaving only a pool of unclear meat patties, and still showing traces of their existence. Boom! Yu Yi and Wan Shi wrestled and rolled into the pool of water nearby, as if a high explosive grenade exploded. A 10-meter-high water column rose directly from the calm mirror-like water surface, causing huge waves. However, after a while, bubbles appeared in the entire pool of water, and thick smoke rose. The water in the pool was quickly evaporated, revealing the figures of two huge monsters underneath. Chapter 53. Longdi Cave, hidden inside. As the real owner of Longdi Cave, everything that happens in Longdi Cave cannot be hidden from the eyes of a mortal white snake. A majestic mountain is hollowed out inside, and a magnificent palace is built. It is illuminated by luminous pearls, the floor is paved with gold, and the walls are built with crystal. Every detail is full of luxury and magnificence. A white snake with pale skin, like a dying old man, was lying on the throne. With half-squinted eyes, it glanced at a football-sized crystal ball in front of the table. The picture played on it was that of Yu Ye in the live broadcast of the fight between 10,000 snakes. For the white snake immortal who has lived for who knows how many years, the battle between Yu Ye and Wan Snake is just a competition between juniors and can only be used as a tool for her to kill boring time. Who wins or loses, it doesn't matter to the white snake immortal. Even though Yu Ye and the white snake immortal both belong to the white python clan. Longdi Cave has never advocated the relationship between teachers and students, relatives and friends, but only a bloody set of Black Forest rules. The strong live, the weak die, it's that simple. Just like humans add salt to cooking, in order to add some interest in watching, the white snake immortal suddenly had an idea in his mind, and said to Tian Xinji, who was holding a fan beside him to fan himself. What do you think is the chance of Yu Ye defeating Wan Shi? Tian Xinji's fanning movement suddenly stopped. Although she was the most trusted confidant of Immortal White Snake, at this moment, she was a little confused as to what Immortal White Snake was thinking. Tian Xinji secretly looked at the White Snake Immortal from the corner of her eyes, and saw that her expression was as usual, and there was no clue what was going on in her expression. Tian Xinji was slightly disappointed, but she also knew that she shouldn't say nonsense. After thinking about it for a while, she said cautiously. Wan Shi is our #1 general in Rika Cave's campaign against Mt Miamu. He has made great achievements in the past, and his strength ranks among the top in the ninja world. Although Yu Ye is young and slightly less powerful, he has many tricks. No one knows how many trump cards he has hidden. In my opinion, both sides have their own characteristics and are equally divided. Tian Xinji rambled here and there, but did not give a direct answer. Haha! The white snake immortal let out a hearty laugh, patted Tian Xinji on the head gently with his tail, and said. You're such a naughty little guy, you're so impeccable in what you say, you don't dare to offend anyone. Ahem! Tian Xinji coughed violently after being poked in the head by the white snake immortal. Tian Xinji looked bitter, and she did not dare to draw any conclusions. After all, whether it was Wan Shi or Yu Ye, they were all ruthless characters. 10,000 snakes, an old yin beep. Yu Ye, people are ruthless and don't talk much. What can Tian Xinji say? Don't dare to say anything. As for the white snake immortal, he doesn't have as much scruples as Tian Xinji. He is like pointing out troops on the battlefield, pointing his tail at the two snakes in the crystal ball, commenting and saying. In my opinion, within an hour, all the snakes will be exposed, and within 3 hours, all the snakes will be dead. What? Tian Xinji looked stunned. She didn't expect that the white snake immortal had such a high opinion of Yu Ye. He actually thought that Yu Ye could defeat the weak and the strong, and defeat Wan Shi, who had been famous for many years. What Tian Xinji was thinking was almost written on her face. However, she did not dare to talk back, but when her beautiful eyes looked at Yu Ye's figure in the crystal ball, she was filled with brilliance. 10,000 Snake Cave. After more than half an hour of fighting, the forest with a radius of 10 miles turned into a mess. It was either destroyed by fire or affected by the battle between Yu Ye and Wan Shi. Rows of big trees were broken in the middle. Whoops! 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 Wan Shi was panting from exhaustion, and her 2 nostrils were like exhaust fans, spitting out circles of white breath. On its body, large and small scales fell off, and fist-sized bumps appeared in many places. They were all traces left after being burned by flames. It looked extremely embarrassed. Yu Ye was even worse. Yu Ye seemed to have just crawled out of the blood pool. He was covered in blood and looked extremely scary. However, the injuries on his body did not look as serious as Wan Shi's. It was probably the wounds that were recovered through primary regeneration. If we use the game in King Pesticide as an analogy, Yu Ye is like Cheng Yaojin in the Liaoshan costume, and he can't be killed no matter how hard he fights. Watching Yu Ye recover as before, Wan Shi felt so aggrieved. This is already the 8th time. In the previous 7 times, Wan Shi relied on her terrifying bite force to almost bite Yu Ye off several times, but in the blink of an eye, this guy came back to life with full health and started running around again. Tell me, are you angry? Oh, no, are you angry with the snake? But Yu Ye also felt uncomfortable. After 3 days and 3 nights of hunting, the prey stock stored in his abdomen was running low. He could only use primary regeneration once more. Wan Shi and Yu Ye's eyes met, and then they looked away. They all know in their hearts that the winner may be decided within the next half hour. Neither party said much. At this time, talking so much would have no effect. It was just a waste of energy. Wan Shi stopped hiding his secrets and finally pulled out a trump card that he had hidden for a long time. That is, poison. Wan Shi suddenly opened its huge mouth and spit out a mouthful of rich venom. A few scattered drops splashed on the ground, making a shishi sound. After a while, thick smoke billowed, and the ground was corroded directly into several bullet-sized holes, which shows how strong the toxicity is. A large amount of venom, which is more terrible than sulfuric acid, splashed towards Yu Yi head and head. Wan Shi is indeed an old cunning man. He obviously has such a powerful trump card, but he has not played it yet, just to paralyze Yu Yi and make him not be on guard at all. Swish! 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 As soon as the venom fell on Yu Yi's skin, it corroded the hard scales in an instant. Yu Yi even felt that he was like being poured by a basin of boiling water, and the part poured by the venom was burning. Hiss! Yu Yi felt pain, his eyes almost popped out, and he let out a shocking cry of pain. Yu Yi understood that this was a life and death moment, and he could not afford to hesitate at all. How can I die here? After being injured, Yu Yi became even more violent, with a hint of cruelty in his eyes. He ignored the snakes and continued to spray venom. Instead, he opened his sharp teeth and bit the scales on the snakes. Injury for injury. At this time, the huge snake bodies of both sides were entangled together, and even if the snakes wanted to hide, they couldn't. Puff! Senbei's teeth fell, and a large piece of delicious snake meat was swallowed by Yu Yi in one gulp. Chapter 54. You want my life, I'll take yours first. Yu Yi got mad, bared his fangs, opened his mouth and bit the part where Wan Shi lost its scales. With the strengthened sharp teeth, he easily tore off a large piece of meat. A large amount of emerald green blood, along with torn meat, gushed out from Wan Shi's wound. Hiss! Wan Shi shuddered all over, but became fierce and no less fierce. The venom in his mouth sprayed out like money, piercing Yu Yi's body. Soon, there were thousands of holes and thick smoke. Both sides had fought with real fire, and they all knew that this battle was coming to an end. They launched the most fierce and brutal attack on each other. Blood, blooming like cherry blossoms. Scales, falling like a downpour. The huge bodies of Yu Yi and Wan Shi were covered with wounds and blood, looking extremely hideous and terrifying. The blood that flowed out accumulated under their bodies, and soon formed a pool of blood, and a fishy stench spread. If it were normal, the large amount of blood would have attracted the attention of predators. However, Yu Yi and Wan Shi were both pythons at the top of the food chain in Longdi Cave, and the fierce battle between the two sides was like a construction team demolishing a house. The rumbling sound of the earthquake had already scared away predators within a radius of hundreds of miles, and they dared not approach these two plague gods. Isn't that courting death? Ah! Wan Shi's half-face was hit by the flame spiral ball several times, directly disfigured, skin and flesh were torn, and even one eye was blinded, even exposing the bones underneath, and the empty hole looked extremely terrifying. But when Wan Shi's remaining eye saw the wound on Yu Yi's body corroded by venom, it was healing again at a speed visible to the naked eye, and Wan Shi suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. Asshole, why aren't you dead yet? Yu Yi gasped for air. He didn't expect the venom of the 10,000 snakes to be so fierce. Not only did he consume all the food in his stomach, but he also consumed more than half of his physical strength before he could heal his wounds. Now, Yu Yi was so tired that he could hardly crawl. Of course, Yu Yi would not show his weak side. His flat snake head was proudly raised, his snake tongue spit out a sound, and he sneered. Ziyu, you will definitely die today. 10,000 snakes. Although he didn't understand what Ziyu meant, the killing intent in Yu Yi's tone was already obvious. 10,000 snakes opened its huge mouth and wanted to spray out venom again. Cough. Cough. 10,000 snakes opened its mouth and tried several times, but found awkwardly that the venom stored in the venom sac had been completely consumed in the short 10-minute battle just now. While you are sick, I will kill you. Yu Yi was full of killing intent, and he rammed into Wan Shi's belly. His sharp teeth pierced through the soft belly skin, and his huge head drilled in, and he opened his mouth and sprayed. Whoosh! 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 The raging flames burst out from Wan Shi's belly. Ah! Wan Shi raised his head and let out a shrill and high-pitched sad roar. There is great terror between life and death. Being on the verge of death, Wan Shi suddenly aroused his fierceness that would not give up until he achieved his goal. The remaining single eye of Wan Shi was wide open, and the veins on his forehead swelled with his heavy breathing, and he said hatefully. Yu Yi, even if I want to die, I want you to be buried with me. Wan Shi opened his crooked mouth and bit Yu Yi's back fiercely, biting like crazy. For a while, both sides launched the most intense and brutal close combat in the most primitive posture. In an instant, blood and flesh splattered, and hundreds of beasts fled. After more than an hour of tug-of-war, the bloody battle finally came to an end. Boom! Yu Yi and Wan Shi's snake bodies entangled with each other, wrestling all the way, and crashed into a mountain, making a shocking roar. Wherever they passed, blood flowed all over the ground, and scales fell all over the ground. Yu Yi lay on the abdomen pierced by Wan Shi, gasping for breath. Although his body was once again covered with horrifying scars, the joy in his eyes could not be concealed. There was no other reason. It was because, under Yu Yi, Wan Shi had already died. The huge head with half of its face disfigured by the flames lay on the ground. Its single eye was staring at Yu Yi with a vicious look, as if saying, I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Yu Yi did not care about this resentful look. Yu Yi was not afraid of Wan Shi when he was alive. Was he afraid that he would become a ghost after he died? That was a joke. After a short rest, Yu Yi swallowed the remains of Wan Shi into his stomach, firstly to obtain the devouring evolution gene, and secondly to obtain food as a consumable for primary regeneration. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring Wan Shi and obtaining 70,000 devouring evolution genes. Wan Shi's strength was similar to that of Orochimaru, both of them were at the level of senior cage level masters. However, since Yu Yi had evolved to the ultimate form, the devouring evolution genes he obtained were much less. Of course, Yu Yi cares more about completing the mission. Yu Yi looked at the mission log, which has been updated. Longdi Cave Domination Mission. Task Description: as the infinite snake of the world in the future, how can you allow yourself to be eaten by mermaids? Open your bloody mouth, show your fangs, start conquering Longdi Cave and become the overlord of Longdi Cave. The third stage of the mission, kill 10,000 snakes and become the overlord of 10,000 Snakes Cave in Longdi Cave, completed. Mission reward: 1 silver treasure chest, 1 gold treasure chest, 1 platinum treasure chest. Looking at these 3 treasure boxes, Yu Ye was a little worried. Once again, Yu Ye began to miss the days when Uncle Snake was still alive. I hope I won't be in trouble again this time. Longdi Cave, hidden inside. The battle between Yu Ye and Wan Snake came to an end, and finally ended with Yu Ye consuming Wan Snake alive. This scene fell into the eyes of Tian Xinji, making her eyelids jump. Cruel. Fear. Not to be messed with. In an instant, Tian Xinji put countless labels on Yu Ye. At the same time, Tian Xinji looked at the white snake immortal, bowed slightly, and said flatteringly. Immortal, you really know everything like a god, everything is under your control. Faced with the flattery of his men, the white snake immortal nodded, accepted it happily, and said with a smile. Although I am old, my eyes are still as sophisticated as ever. This Yu Ye has done a good job. He is worthy of being a descendant of my white python clan. You choose a time to bring him here. Tian Xinji's beautiful eyes were shining again and again, her thoughts were changing, and she bowed and said. Follow the instructions of the immortal. Chapter 55. Everything must be done with a sense of ceremony, especially for the black-faced African chiefs. In order to save the good things for last, Yu Ye decided to open the silver treasure chest first. The sky is full of spirits, the earth is full of spirits, the gods and Buddhas in the sky are blessing me, they must give me good things. The next moment, the treasure chest opens. Bite. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the leggings of the goddess of death. Death's leggings, from the Marvel world, Death's collection. Once you put on these pants, you are not far from death. You yet. What the hell is this? System, come out here, I promise I won't beat you up. Naruto threw the leggings on the ground and burned them with a fire to prevent them from being an eyesore. It seems that not even the gods and Buddhas in the sky can save my fate as a non-chief. A trace of cruelty flashed in Yu Yi's eyes, and he secretly said. Since you don't give me good luck, when I become stronger, I will eat all of you gods and Buddhas. This is the deep resentment from African chiefs who have lived for thousands of years. In order to change his luck, Yu Yi specially found a lake this time, jumped in and took a bath, cleaning all the dirty blood on his body. After landing again, he felt refreshed all over his body. Looking at the gold treasure chest in front of him, Yu Yi had an inexplicable feeling that he would definitely get something good this time. The next moment, the treasure light appears. Bite. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, Advanced Fire Affinity. It's not easy. It is said that Xian can change one's fate and Krypton can change one's fault. It seems that there is some truth in it. Yu Yi struck while the iron was hot and quickly continued his efforts to open the platinum treasure chest. Baoguang appears again. Bite. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, God-level Fire Affinity. Could it be that fire and I are related to each other? Yu Yi thought to himself and looked at the system's personal information. System goal, help the host evolve into an infinite snake of all realms. Current world, Naruto. Host, Yu Yi. Breed, White Python. Age, under 1 year old, ultimate body. Lifespan, 100 years. Swallow evolutionary genes, 3000/23000. Level, LV230. Language, Snake, Human, Hokage only. Talents, Elementary Devouring, God-level Fire Affinity, Intermediate Earth Affinity. Abilities, Strengthen Fangs, Strengthen Skin, Primary Regeneration. Comprehensive Evaluation, I have initially entered the level of Penumbra, and hope to continue to work hard. The infinite snake of all worlds has just begun. Follow the footsteps of the system, and first become a creature at the top of the food chain in the world of Naruto. After killing Wan Shi, Yu Yi was promoted to level 3. However, there are no eggs. Naruto has evolved to the ultimate body, without any physical changes, except for a slight increase in strength. After obtaining the God-level Fire Affinity, Yu Yi made a discovery. Now, when he releases the flames, he consumes very little magic chakra and his battery life is greatly enhanced. He doesn't have to burn the forest every time he fights a powerful enemy to create a favorable terrain for himself. Moreover, Naruto is now able to unleash more powerful moves that need to be further developed. All in all, this time it was a fruitful experience. Just as Yu Yi was immersed in the joy of becoming stronger, a burst of laughter like silver bells came from above his head. Kick kick. Kick kick. Xiao Yu Yi, it turns out you are here. My sister has had a hard time looking for you. Hearing a somewhat familiar voice, Yu Yi raised his head. Then he saw Tian Xin Chenji descending from the sky wearing a jade green palace dress. She has a slender pink neck, a little pink on her face, curved eyebrows, a pair of snake eyes with sparkling eyes, and the corners of her mouth are slightly upturned. She walks forward with a smile that is both charming and flattering. Tian Xin Chenji's voice is like a hook, and her charming voice can catch the eyes of others in an instant, making people subconsciously look at her immediately. Xiao Yu Yi, Immortal White Snake has invited me. I hope you can come with your sister. Yu Yi looked at Tian Xin Chenji with a hint of teasing and remained silent. Not long after he killed Wan Shi, Tian Xin Chenji came. Even a fool knew that the other party had the means to monitor him. Otherwise, how could he know his whereabouts so well? Moreover, at this time, the system spoke again. The task of dominating Rika Cave. Task description, as the infinite snake of the world in the future, how can you allow yourself to be eaten by mermaids? Open your bloody mouth, reveal your fangs, start conquering Longdi Cave, and become the overlord of Longdi Cave. The fourth phase mission, kill the White Snake Immortal, completely control Longdi Cave, and become the true overlord of Longdi Cave. Task reward, 1 diamond treasure chest, 1 star treasure chest, 1 king treasure chest. Really? Seeing this mission, a look of understanding flashed in Yu Yi's eyes. When he first took over the task of dominating the Dragon Cave, Yu Ye had a hunch that sooner or later he would have to face off with the White Snake Immortal, and it was just as he expected. Of course, with Yu Ye's current small body, it would be a bit difficult to challenge the White Snake Immortal. White Snake Immortal is said to be a strong man who has lived since the days of Six Paths Immortal until now. His strength is unfathomable, between the top shadow level powerhouses and super shadows. Perhaps, when Yu Ye grows to the level of Six Paths Pain, he will be qualified to arm wrestle with the White Snake Immortal. Sensing that something was wrong with Yu Ye's gaze, Tian Xin Shenji's heart thumped and she secretly said something bad. Could it be that Yu Ye knew that they were spying on him? However, after all, Tian Xin Shenji had the support of the White Snake Immortal behind her. Although she was a little afraid that Yu Ye would snap her away without saying a word, she still had to bite the bullet and said, "Xiao Yu Yi, don't blame my sister for not reminding you. If you go late, I'm afraid the Immortal will be unhappy." Tian Xin Shenji's words were said lightly, but there was a hidden meaning behind them, threatening Yu Ye with the White Snake Immortal. Yu Yi's mind was spinning, and he thought to himself. The White Snake Immortal summoned him this time just because he had killed Wan Shi, and it was only natural that he would hand over the control of Wan Snake Cave to him. However, Wan Shi has always been the vanguard in attacking Miamu Mountain. Once Yu Ye takes over the authority of Wan Shi Cave, it means taking over Wan Shi's position. Next, I'm afraid White Snake Immortal will find an excuse to send Yu Ye to Miamu Mountain to fight to the death with those toads. But if Yu Ye refuses like this, I'm afraid it will offend the White Snake Immortal and be detrimental to Yu Ye's development. Just when Nato was in a dilemma, he felt Sasuke's signal for help coming from somewhere in the ninja world. Since the two parties signed a slavery contract produced by the system, one person and one snake have special channels to contact each other. At this time, Sasuke was suffering from a major crisis, so he wanted to use psychic techniques to summon him to help. Yu Ye smiled slightly at Tian Shinji and said, "I'm sorry, someone in the ninja world is summoning me. When I come back, I will come to see the Immortal to apologize." With that said, under the dumbfounded gaze of Tian Shinji, Yu Ye's figure suddenly disappeared. Chapter 56. A post town not far from Konoha village. The post town got its name from the fact that civilians and businessmen traveling from north to south stayed here to rest their horses. The town is not big, with only more than 500 households and a population of several thousand. But because this is one of the only roads leading to Konoha village from other places, businessmen from all over the world gather here, and the old streets are bustling with people. There are hotels, shopping malls, and restaurants on both sides, row upon row, with crowds of tourists and busy traffic. So lively. The town was born and prospered because of the post. Sasuke was in the hospital and accidentally learned that Uchiha Itachi had come to the village. He followed him all the way. After a painstaking search, he finally came to a hotel and saw the man at the door of Naruto's accommodation. Uchiha Itachi. Enemies are extremely jealous when they meet. Sasuke had a gloomy look on his face, his three Megatama Sharingan eyes rotated rapidly, his eyes widened with anger, and he wished he could skin and bone Itachi Uchiha to vent his hatred. "Itachi Uchiha! I'm going to kill you!" Hearing Sasuke's hysterical roar, the two men wearing red clouds and black bottoms turned slightly. Kisame looked at Sasuke up and down from the corner of his eyes for a moment, and saw that he had beautiful features and a majestic air. His eyebrows were somewhat similar to Itachi Uchiha's. Especially his tone of voice when he was angry was the same as Itachi's. He couldn't help but joked. "Tisk, Itachi, he looks so much like you, he couldn't be your illegitimate son, right?" Uchiha Itachi. After a moment of silence, Uchiha Itachi maintained his usual aloof appearance and said without saltiness. "He's my brother." On the side, Naruto was a little confused. Is this the scene of a large-scale family recognition event? Kisame rolled his eyes and pretended to be careless, but in fact he was hiding his sword secretly and said, "Itachi, I heard that you killed all the Uchiha clan members." Uchiha Itachi. Kisame really doesn't mention which pot to open. Uchiha Itachi even wanted to tear his mouth open. What I fear most is that the air suddenly becomes quiet. The two brothers, Uchiha Itachi and Sasuke, looked at each other speechlessly, their eyes like daggers, colliding in the air, like a gunpowder keg exploding at a moment's notice, filled with a strong smell of gunpowder. If looks could kill, Uchiha Itachi would have been killed countless times. There was silence all around, and the air was filled with murderous intent. A gecko on the wall was so frightened that it trembled and fell to the ground, motionless. It was actually scared to death. The corridor was filled with suffocating depression. It's as heavy as a big stone, pressing on everyone's chest. Uchiha Itachi looked at Sasuke so calmly, as motionless as a stone sculpture. Sasuke's eyes were wide open and he was very excited. His 3 Megatama Sharingan eyes were turning faster and faster. He couldn't stand the atmosphere and took action first. I live just to wait for this day and kill you with my own hands. The 5 fingers of Sasuke's right hand were clasped together, and strands of electric light flashed, gathering into irregular polymers. At this time, it was so bright that it was difficult not to attract attention. Uchiha Itachi raised his eyebrows and recognized Kakashi's famous stunt at a glance. He was a little surprised and said, "Chidori." Sasuke didn't care if he was surprised or not, at this moment, he just wanted to kill the man in front of him. Ah! Go to hell! Sasuke sprinted, and he rushed out like a cheetah, creating a strong wind. With the San Magatama Sharingan fully open, everything in front of Sasuke's eyes slowed down. He didn't know how long it took, but in the blink of an eye, he rushed to the end of the corridor. The Chidori held in his hand shot out like a thunder gun, carrying the shrill sound of hundreds of birds chirping, piercing everything in front of him. However, Uchiha Itachi has already seen through everything. Just when Chidori was about to hit his body, Uchiha Itachi was able to calm down and turned his body slightly sideways, easily avoiding Sasuke's all-out attack. Boom! Chidori hit the wall at the end of the corridor. The concrete wall, which was more than 10 centimeters thick, was as brittle as tofu. In an instant, a hole with a diameter of 2 meters was punched through, and the scenery outside the hotel could be clearly seen. A breeze blew across my face, bringing with it the noisy sounds of the outside world. It's too late to say it, but it's soon. Itachi Uchiha transformed his palms into claws and grabbed Sasuke's wrist like lightning. Uchiha Itachi glanced at Kisame from the corner of his eye and saw that he had a scrutinizing look on his face. A cold look flashed across his eyes, and Uchiha Itachi knew clearly that he could not let the Akatsuki organization doubt his loyalty, so he had no choice but to say sorry to Sasuke in his heart. Click! With the crisp sound of fractures, Uchiha Itachi calmly broke Sasuke's wrist. Then, before Sasuke came back to his senses, his other hand, like a cloud dragon's claws, grabbed Sasuke's neck, pushed Sasuke's back against the wall, looked at him with profound eyes, and said, "My stupid brother, with your caliber, you really disappoint me." Seeing Sasuke in danger, Naruto became angry. "Let go of Sasuke." Naruto's pupils opened angrily, and from his body, the ominous orange-red chakra that symbolized the 9 tails spread out, permeating every foot and inch of the entire corridor, making even the ants passing by tremble. However, there was one person who was not afraid of him at all. Kisame stood in front of Naruto, his tall and burly figure was like a cold mountain that could not be crossed. Kisame carried Samehada, who was as tall as a man, on his shoulders, stared down at Naruto, and said coldly, "Don't get in the way." Although Sasuke's throat was locked, he sneered, "Do you think you can beat me?" The next moment, in the surprised eyes of Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke was bathed in fire, and possessed by blazing high-temperature flames. Uchiha Itachi retracted his hand as if he was burned. He saw Sasuke walking out of the flames as if nothing had happened, and looked him up and down as if he had just met him for the first time. He was quite surprised and said, "Ninjutsu without seal." Sasuke did not answer, but the murderous intent in his eyes did not diminish. He said, "It seems that it is still too difficult for me to deal with you with my current strength." Seeing that Sasuke finally had self-knowledge, Uchiha Itachi almost didn't recognize him and smiled with relief. He really wanted to say, "This kid is teachable." However, Sasuke's next sentence made Uchiha Itachi not know what to say. However, Sasuke quickly formed a seal, pressed on the ground, and chanted like a prayer. "Supreme Lord, I am your most loyal servant. I summon you with the most pious heart to break the shackles that shackle you in the Ryokai cave and bring destruction to my enemies. Appear." The end of the Mad Python. Chapter 57. Who is it? Calling me? Yu Yi's voice seemed to come from the distant void, but it shook his heart. Immediately afterwards, in the shocked eyes of Uchiha Itachi, Kisame, and Naruto, from Sasuke's summoning circle, like a volcano erupting, a giant pillar of fire soared into the sky and penetrated into the sky. Boom! The ceiling of the entire hotel was directly shattered into slag by the pillar of fire. The deafening sound was like the sound of a cannon, which immediately attracted the attention of the residents of the town. The fire was raging, overwhelming, and spread quickly, soon burning the entire hotel. Thick black smoke curled up, and the surging heat waves came one after another. Subsequently, before the villagers could organize manpower to put out the fire, under everyone's stunned gaze, in the burning red fire, a behemoth as tall as a dozen stories slowly appeared, reflected in everyone's eyes. A giant white python. This is a 100-meter-long giant python with a broad back and a snow-white body. Its palm-sized scales glow in the firelight. He was bathed in flames, and the temperature of the surrounding flames was completely useless to him. Balls of red fire surrounded the white giant python, making him appear to be extremely powerful and noble. The fire was also shining in his eyes, as if he was the most noble creature in the world. He is like an emperor in flames. The flat triangular snake head was held high, with bright red snake letters stretching and contracting. It stared with a pair of lantern-sized eyes, and a long roar came from its mouth. The sound spread around like a shock wave, and circles of flame spread around like waves. I am the embodiment of fire. As Yu Yi's words fell, the flames seemed to tremble with excitement and burned even more vigorously. Ah! The ordinary people in the town had never seen such a huge behemoth before, and a high-decibel soprano came from nowhere, causing everyone to come back to their senses and run away in a panic. In the blink of an eye, the entire quaint market was deserted, and not even a ghost could be seen on the street. The figures of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame appeared on the balcony not far away. Looking at the white giant python summoned by Sasuke in front of him, Uchiha Itachi's usually calm eyes finally aroused a wave of excitement and flashed a bit of surprise. Obviously, Uchiha Itachi did not expect that Sasuke's strength was far beyond his expectation. Kisame glanced at Uchiha Itachi out of the corner of his eye, noticed the change in the expression in his eyes, and couldn't help joking. Itachi, this brother of yours is so interesting. It makes me want to have a few fights with him. Uchiha Itachi's eyes turned cold, like the cold air coming from Juyu's frost, and he said displeasedly. He's mine. Kisame had worked with Uchiha Itachi for so long, and this was the first time he saw him so angry. He quickly closed his mouth and his eyes wandered. No one knew what he was thinking. Not far away from the two of them, on the eaves that formed a horn-like shape with them, Jiraiya was holding Naruto's back collar, climbing up to get a distant view, with a very solemn expression on his face. Jiraiya had been watching Naruto secretly. He originally didn't want to come out so early, but his plan couldn't keep up with the changes, so he had to step in to take Naruto out of the danger zone to prevent any mishaps. Naruto looked at the huge white python without any fear. He was only happy that his good friend had become stronger and said excitedly. As expected of Sasuke, he managed to get such a powerful psychic beast. Jiraiya had no expression on his face, struck Naruto on the head with a hand knife, and said. Idiot! Didn't you see that he summoned a snake? It means that Sasuke had a close connection with Orochimaru at some point. Ah! Naruto was a bit belated, and only now did he come to his senses. Naruto suddenly shuddered when he thought of Orochimaru, that smooth middle-aged man with a gloomy face all day long. But Naruto wouldn't believe it even to death that Sasuke would seek refuge with that rebellious ninja from Konoha village, he said stubbornly. Luxury immortal, don't be so judgmental. Maybe Sasuke got a psychic beast from somewhere else. Jiraiya curled his lips, not intending to continue the unnecessary argument with Naruto. That will lower your IQ. Jiraiya looked intently and saw, in the midst of the fire, Sasuke half crouched on the ground, with one hand on the ground, his head slightly bowed, welcoming Nato's arrival with an extremely pious attitude. Welcome your majesty. Nato nodded slightly to say hello. Then, with blazing flames in Yu Yi's eyes, like a sharp sword trying to pierce the air, he looked sharply at Uchiha Itachi, and said coldly and domineeringly. You are the one who bullied me. Uchiha Itachi still had that unshakable expression, as if nothing could move him. Only when he saw Sasuke's virtue from the corner of his eye, a slight wave of emotion flashed in the depths of his eyes. Uchiha Itachi hadn't spoken yet, but Kisame had a bad temper and couldn't stand Nato's arrogance for the first time. Carrying his thick and heavy shark muscles, he took a step forward, raised a ferocious smile at the corner of his mouth, revealing a row of triangular shark teeth, and said. I haven't eaten snake meat for a long time, so let me kill you and give you a toothpaste. Unexpectedly, just when Kisame was about to make a move, Itachi Uchiha suddenly stopped him. Hey, Itachi, you're not following the rules. Kisame was quite unhappy to be disturbed. Uchiha Itachi, wearing a slender black robe with red clouds, walked past Kisame and said in an unquestionable tone. I said, Sasuke is mine. He suddenly raised his head, his pair of Sharingan burst into sharp light, stared at Yi, and said coldly. Including this summoning beast, it is also mine. Facing the unprecedented strength of Uchiha Itachi, even Kisame had to admit defeat, stepped back a few steps, made way, shrugged unhappily, and said. Okay, it's yours, it's all yours, okay. Uchiha Itachi did not answer, but stared at Yi with cold eyes. That look made Yi feel familiar, it was like a hen protecting her calf. It seems that Uchiha Itachi is upset about Sasuke calling Yi the master. The three Megatama in Uchiha Itachi's pupils spun rapidly, turning into a dark windmill shape, and said in a cold tone. In this world, there is a strongest flame called Amaterasu, which will not go out until the target is completely burned out. I want to see if you, a giant python who claims to be the incarnation of fire, can resist it. Suddenly, Uchiha Itachi's pupils widened, a drop of blood and tears dripped from the corner of his eyes, and the surging black flames suddenly fluttered out. Amaterasu. Chapter 58. A small post town not far from Konoha village. Uchiha Itachi stood tall and straight like a steel gun, his black robe fluttering without wind, making a sharp sound. His pupils were wide open, a terrible energy brewing inside, a drop of blood and tears dripped from the corner of his eyes, sliding down his cheeks like scarlet agate. Amaterasu. A dark flame gushed out from the windmill-shaped Mangekyo Sharingan. This is not an ordinary flame, but a flame named after the god Amaterasu. Amaterasu has a very high temperature and can melt everything. The moment Amaterasu appeared, the eaves made of rubble under Uchiha Itachi's feet reached the ignition point directly, spontaneously combusted, and instantly turned into ashes. Wherever Amaterasu passed, the ground paved with rubble was directly burned, and the high temperature even burned them into quartz. It's so terrifying. Looking at the pitch-black flames sweeping towards Yi, even from a distance, everyone present could clearly feel the incomparable high temperature, and the whirring heat wave was even more overwhelming, curling their hair. From the current Amaterasu, they clearly sensed the destructive power contained in this pitch-black flame. Even if Jiraiya asked himself, he was not completely sure that he could deal with Amaterasu. Jiraiya's face became solemn again. It was the first time he saw such a tricky flame, and he gave it a high valuation, saying, "This pitch-black flame seems not to come from the human world." Naruto did not refute anything, but just watched the situation nervously. "Sasuke, don't be in trouble." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yi made an amazing decision. Yi, he was actually motionless in the same place. As the saying goes, the emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is anxious. Seeing that Yi didn't dodge or fight back, Naruto held his breath before Sasuke got anxious, thinking. Isn't this summoned beast that Sasuke summoned stupid? Why doesn't it dodge? On the other hand, Kisame folded his arms over his chest. Seeing this, Kisame smiled coldly. What a stupid and arrogant guy, just stand there and wait to die. As Uchiha Itachi's partner, Kisame has 100% confidence in his Amaterasu. When Amaterasu appears, who can compete with him? Kisame has never seen any creature that was touched by Amaterasu escape unscathed in the end. In Kisame's opinion, Yi is dead. Just as everyone was either laughing or watching coldly. Uchiha Itachi controlled Amaterasu, and the surging black flames directly engulfed Yi's huge body. Sizzle! 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 The flames made strange sounds, reminding people of the sound of barbecue being burnt in a barbecue restaurant. Could it be that? Just as everyone was thinking about it, Yi felt more comfortable than ever before. With the newly promoted God-level fire affinity, Amaterasu, who makes people turn pale at the sight of fire, made Yi feel like he was soaking in a hot spring, warm all over, and every cell in his body was humming comfortably. Time passed by minute. 10 seconds. 1 minute. 5 minutes. Everyone looked at the dark flames still burning in front of them, and they were speechless. Silence, silence is the bridge tonight, ugh. As the controller of Amaterasu, Uchiha Itachi showed a look of surprise and doubt in his eyes. Even though he was smart since childhood, experienced legends and was knowledgeable, at this moment, he was like a blind man touching an elephant, and he didn't know the true face of Mount Lu. Kisame's sneer suddenly froze, and his face was extremely solemn. As Itachi's partner, Kisame had never seen any creature that could remain unscathed under the burning of Amaterasu. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes wide, as if he had seen something incredible and unimaginable. However, in the blazing black flames, a huge flat snake head poked out, revealing Yu Yi's intact face, with a pair of lantern-sized pupils, looking at everyone teasingly, as if the emperor living deep in the palace was mocking the old farmers in the countryside for sitting in a well and looking at the sky. Seeing this, Kisame was in doubt and blurted out. "This is impossible." Seeing Yu Yi's huge figure walking out of the black flames, his scales were still pure white, without even a trace of being blackened, the whole audience suddenly fell silent. Yu Yi moved his neck, making a series of crackling sounds like frying beans, and hummed comfortably, saying, "Thank you for giving me a bath. Invisible pretense is the most deadly." Uchiha Itachi's face was deep, even with his amazing scheming, he was in a trance for a moment at this moment, as if the one in front of him was not a summoned beast from the Ryokai cave, but an emperor from the world of fire. Noble. Domineering. Uchiha Itachi took a deep breath, not affected by Yu Yi's momentum, his eyes flickered, and said, "No wonder you dare to call yourself the incarnation of fire, you really have some skills." On the other hand, Yu Yi was not complacent. Yu Yi knew that with his current half-shadow strength, facing a senior shadow-level strongman like Uchiha Itachi was not as easy as facing Manjusri and Orochimaru. Orochimaru, needless to say, was crippled by the third-generation Hokage and could not use any ninjutsu. As for the 10,000 snakes, apart from their extremely strong bodies, sharp teeth that can cut through gold and iron, and their highly toxic venom, they have no other means, and can be consumed alive by Yu Yi with his primary regeneration. However, Uchiha Itachi is different. In addition to the powerful fire escape ninjutsu, he also masters a series of powerful jutsu, not to mention the powerful ninjutsu such as Susanoo, and even the Tsukuyomi, which is considered the strongest illusion. Even though Yu Yi's mental power combined from his two lives is strong enough to be no less than ordinary illusions, he still has no choice but to retreat in the face of Tsukuyomi. One person, one snake, the four looked at each other, and remained silent for a long time. Similar to Yu Yi's concerns, Uchiha Itachi did not know Yu Yi's background. He did not know that Yu Yi was not afraid of anything except fire. He had been fooled by Yu Yi's performance at the level of the best actor. In Uchiha Itachi's heart, Yu Yi had been labeled as someone who could not be grudged. What's more, Uchiha Itachi didn't need to fight Yu Yi to death. After all, his excuse for coming to Konoha village this time was to take away Naruto, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto, the little brat, was not far away, and Jiraiya, the Sunin, was beside him. Why did Uchiha Itachi waste time with Yu Yi? Both sides had their own calculations and concerns, so they didn't fight again. Just when Uchiha Itachi was about to let Sasuke go, Yu Yi was calculating Uchiha Itachi and Kisame in his heart. Oh no, it should be said that Yu Yi was calculating the entire Akatsuki organization. Chapter 59. The ancients said that a gentleman is born without being different, and a gentleman is good at pretending to things. The biggest difference between humans and livestock is that humans use their brains to do things. Inside the body of the white python is the human soul from the earth. Of course Nato will not be stupid and fight to the death with Uchiha Itachi and others. That is unrealistic. On the contrary, he wants to use them. Previously, Yu Yi's mission of dominating Longdi Cave required him to kill the White Snake Immortal. This time made Yu Yi feel very embarrassed. After all, it is not that simple for the White Snake Immortal, as a being between the top shadow and the super shadow, to survive in the era of the Six Paths Immortal. But the mission didn't say that Yu Yi couldn't ask for outside help. Currently, in the entire ninja world, there are only a handful of people who can kill White Snake Sennin, but among the Akatsuki organization, there are quite a few people who can kill snakes. Six Paths of Pain. Uchiha Itachi. Kisame. Hooligan. Even Haiden who took blood and cast a curse. Thinking of this, Yu Yi stretched out the scarlet snake letter, licked his mouth, his eyes sparkled, and he looked at Uchiha Itachi and Kisame with different eyes. Where is the enemy? This is the teammate who came to our door. Although the ideal is full, the reality is very skinny. Here comes the problem. How should Yu Yi seek help from the Akatsuki organization? Or in other words, what kind of benefits should Yu Yi offer to impress the Akatsuki organization? His personal combat prowess? If only a penumbra-level combat force joins the Akatsuki organization, I'm afraid they can't be invited. So, what else? Right. It is the resource of the entire Longdi Cave. Once Yuya became the real overlord of Rika Cave, thousands of psychic beasts in the entire Rika Cave would join the Akatsuki organization, and their military strength would surge instantly. Even the method of refining celestial chakra and practicing celestial magic is enough to tempt the entire Akatsuki organization members. Even Six Paths Pain and Afe probably have no reason to reject Yuya in the face of this huge benefit. The more Nato thought about it, the more excited he became. After thinking about it for a moment, he said to Uchiha Itachi, I have long heard that there are countless powerful people in the Akatsuki organization. Even the cage of the 5 major ninja villages today cannot compare to you. I saw you today, and it is indeed well deserved. Hearing this, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame looked at each other, and they could see the confusion in each other's eyes. You know, at this time, the Akatsuki organization is not a household name in the entire ninja world. The reputation of the Akatsuki organization only spreads in the underground exchanges and among the dealers who hire killers and war mercenaries. Even if someone knows about the Akatsuki organization, they know some of the outsiders, but they have no idea how many shadow-level experts there are in it. From Yu Yi's tone, it is clear that he is very familiar with the personnel structure of the Akatsuki organization. This. Could it be that there are traitors in the organization? The smarter the person, the more complex their ideas are. Undoubtedly, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame were both extremely smart people, so they were made suspicious by Nato Ichiban's words of bluff and deception. Certainly. This is also thanks to the fact that Yuya took a bath with Amaterasu just now. His strength seemed to be unfathomable, which enhanced the weight of his words. Seeing this, Yuya smiled, and finally exposed his real purpose and said, I am not an enemy of your Akatsuki organization. On the contrary, we can be good friends and even good allies. The word ally is shocking. Not to mention Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, even Jiraiya, who was watching the changes from a distance, also had a serious look on his face. Uchiha Itachi's eyes flickered. He was a little confused as to what the white giant python in front of him had planned, so he pretended to be deaf and dumb and said with a confused look on his face. Sir, I don't understand what you are talking about. This is obviously the purpose of trapping you yet. Nato's mind was exquisite and clear, and he naturally noticed the wariness and distrust in Uchiha Itachi and Kisame. He did not want to dispel their doubts, but just wanted to use the power of the Akatsuki organization, and said, I have something very important that I want to discuss with your Akatsuki organization. You take me directly to see your leader, Pain, and I will discuss it with him face to face. Does he even know the leader Pain? At this moment, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame were really shocked. After hearing their conversation, Jiraiya touched the back of his head, his face was heavy, and he murmured. Pain. So the leader of their Akatsuki organization is called Pain. Jiraiya looked at Yuya with a faint look, and there was a flash of light deep in his eyes. This giant white python knows a lot of information about the Akatsuki organization. It seems necessary to capture him and torture him. Not to mention the sudden hostility in Jiraiya's heart, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame also had murderous intentions towards Nato. This guy knows too much. There is only one kind of person in the world who can keep secrets, and that is the dead. Kisame held same hata in his right hand, and Uchiha Itachi secretly formed a seal under his sleeve. An alarm bell rang in Yu Yi's heart, constantly reminding him of the approaching danger. But Yuya seemed to be fine, turning a blind eye to their murderous intent and thinking about himself. Use the magic lantern body technique to contact Pain and tell him that I have a way to help him fulfill his long-cherished wish. Because Nato brought too many surprises, this time I heard that he even knew the contact information within the Akatsuki organization. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame said that we were all calm. Calm down the devil. I fall. Listening to Yuyi's confident tone, as if he was an old friend of Pain, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame's hearts were in turmoil, and they were immediately full of concerns and suspicions. They didn't know why Yuyi had the confidence to say this. Wasn't he afraid of knowing too much and being torn apart by members of the Akatsuki organization? Uchiha Itachi was indeed an excellent double agent. He was the first to give up his hostility, untied the ninjutsu in his sleeves, and said to Yuyi cautiously. We will take the time to report this matter to the leader. As for whether the leader is willing to see you, it depends on his decision. Uchiha Itachi said so, Kisame naturally couldn't do it. He grinned at Yuyi, revealing a row of sharp teeth, threatening, and then carried same hada on his back again. Seeing that the crisis was resolved, Yi was lucky in his heart. Being hostile to two powerful cage-level masters, it would be a lie to say that Yi was not afraid. Cold sweat had already broken out on his broad back. Now, seeing Uchiha Itachi let go, Yi finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, Yi ignored that there was another cage-level master here. Seeing that Yi and the Akatsuki organization had reached some kind of evil agreement, because the friend of the enemy is the enemy, Jiraiya put Naruto in a safe place, stepped forward and said, "A traitor from Konoha village, a traitor from the Hidden Mist village, and an evil giant python, since I have met you today, I will not let you go no matter what." Chapter 60. Hearing Jiraiya's words, Yi's eyes suddenly became strange. Where did Jiraiya get the confidence to deal with the two of them and the snake at once? Yi naturally did not dare to fight Jiraiya alone, so he said to Uchiha Itachi and Kisame with great righteousness. "In order to show my sincerity in cooperating with your Akatsuki organization, I will fight side by side with you, help you eliminate the three ninjas Jiraiya, and take away Naruto, the Nine Tails Jinchuriki." It was obvious that Yi was afraid of Jiraiya and did not dare to fight him alone, but he said that he was helping Uchiha Itachi and Kisame. Moreover, when Yi said this, he was particularly righteous, so that the two people who did not know his background were fooled and thought that Yi really had this ability. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame looked at each other, with sinister thoughts. What is the origin of this white giant python? It even knew their plan to capture the tailed beast? As a double agent, Uchiha Itachi has been working for Konoha village in secret. He originally didn't want to fight Jiraiya. However, Uchiha Itachi went to Konoha village to visit Sasuke this time, and the excuse he found was to capture Naruto. If he refuses now, it may make Kisame suspicious. Uchiha Itachi had a lot of plans in his mind, but it was a pity that he was in a difficult situation now, so he had to bite the bullet and said, "Very good, you let us see your sincerity, I believe the leader will be very happy to see you." The words were very beautiful, but he didn't know whether he should say it in his heart. On the side, Kisame was already very impatient, pulled out the same hada on his back, and said carelessly, "You two are so long-winded, hurry up and get started." Kisame's muscles all over his body were like steel and iron castings, but they were just right, not bloated and clumsy at all. His eyes were wide open, his shoulders were broad, and in his right hand he held a strange long sword with spikes all over it, exuding a fierce aura. Kisame grinned at Jiraiya, revealing a row of triangular teeth, and said coldly, "I have heard that the three ninjas are powerful, and I have always wanted to compete with you, but I have not been able to do so. I want to use this same hada in my hand to weigh whether you are worthy of the reputation." After that, Kisame held same hada and shot out like a cannonball, accompanied by the sound of whistling wind, and the powerful same hada slashed towards Jiraiya. Facing the sharpest sword of the seven ninjas handed down from generation to generation in the Hidden Mist village, Jiraiya was not in a hurry. He put his hands together and shouted in a deep voice, "Ninjutsu! Needle Jizo!" As soon as the voice fell, his white hair, which fell like a waterfall, suddenly became hard and long, as if it had been transformed, and was as hard as steel, protecting himself tightly. A set of movements, done in one go, showing the style of the three ninjas. Kisame slashed down with a sword, and the strong and uncast sword could even split the rock, but it suffered a great loss on the seemingly fragile white hair. Dang! The sound was deafening like the morning bell and evening drum, and Kisame even felt a rebound force coming, which made his right arm temporarily numb. Just when Kisame was about to chop the second knife, the curtain-like white hair suddenly opened to both sides. Jiraiya stretched out his right hand with the raised nan in his hand, and as fast as a meteor, he blasted towards Kisame's chest. What a Kisame! In this lightning moment, Kisame twisted his waist, retracted his raised arm, and took advantage of the situation to gather his right leg, and kicked Jiraiya's wrist with the tip of his shoe from bottom to top. Bang! With a dull sound, Jiraiya felt pain, and the raised nan in his hand shifted, narrowly brushing against Kisame's bangs in front of his forehead. A bunch of bangs broke immediately, and a few strands of hair fell down. It's a long story, but everything happened in just a moment. When masters fight, every move is fatal. If you are not careful, you will end up in an irreparable situation. Watching Jiraiya and Kisame fight, Uchiha Itachi, the double agent, had no intention of taking action at all. Yi seemed to understand what he meant. Itachi Uchiha was determined to do nothing. As expected, how many people who can be double agents are easy to deal with. Feeling a little bit of pity in his heart, Yu Yi then put away the little thoughts in his mind, his eyes were fixed, his face was murderous, and a snake tail whipped the ground, like a meteor hammer sweeping towards Jiraiya. Hey! Before the tail arrived, a strong wind had already hit. Seeing that the snake tail even hit himself, Kisame had 1,000 curses in his heart, not knowing whether to say it or not, and quickly moved away to avoid being affected by the fish pond. No big deal. Jiraiya showed disdain on his face. When the giant tail swept across, the whole person was like a civet cat, dealing with Kisame skillfully while easily avoiding the giant tail. Boom! The giant tail crossed the long street of the town from east to west, with great power, and suddenly fell into the air. The nearby rows of hotels, shops, and houses seemed to be made of paper and shattered at the touch. Jiraiya saw that Yu Yi had amazing destructive power, and that Kisame was eyeing him covetously, and that Uchiha Itachi had an ambiguous attitude and it was difficult to distinguish between enemies and friends. He quickly formed seals with both hands, pressed them on the ground, and shouted. Ninjutsu. Summoning technique. Accompanied by a puff of thick smoke, a giant toad like a hill appeared. This orange toad was wearing a short shirt to cover the large and small bumps on his skin. He had a long sword on his waist and a pipe in his mouth to blow clouds and exhale smoke. It was Game Bunta. Bunta was suddenly summoned to the ninja world, and said in a somewhat unhappy tone. Jiraiya, didn't I tell you? If you don't have anything to do, don't come to me. The summoned beasts in the ninja world are very individual. Once Wan Shi comes out, he will sacrifice hundreds of people alive, and Game Bunta has never liked to meddle in other people's business. Jiraiya has always ignored Game Bunta's complaints. He pointed at Yu Yi not far away and said. Bunta, Umayaboka Mountain and Ryokai Cave have been feuding for a long time. Look, I found you an opponent to play with you. Bunta glanced at Yu Yi, took a few puffs of cigarettes, and said. It's this little guy, no problem, watch me help you deal with him. Bunta spoke arrogantly, and of course he had the capital to be arrogant. In Bunta's eyes, there were no more than 5 people in the entire Ryokai Cave who could be called opponents by him, and they were all famous snakes. As for Yu Yi, Bunta had never seen him in the war between Mayaboka Mountain and Ryokai Cave, so he naturally didn't take him seriously. Jiraiya still stood on Bunta's head for the sake of prudence and said cautiously. Bunta, don't be careless. The 3 enemies in front of us are not ordinary people. We must work together to deal with one of them first. As the saying goes, it is better to break 1 finger than to hurt 10 fingers. Jiraiya looked at the 2 people and the snake, and finally his eyes fell on Yu Yi. After all, the persimmon should be squeezed soft first.